As we wait for everything to catch up, I thought I would kind of start with something a little bit more fun here to start off for the stream and make sure that all connections are up. So I'm going to go ahead and play this first.
Are you waiting for your turn to speak, sir? Are you listening?
Tell me about the highest level military intelligence.
You keep interrupting me.
Because you're lying! You're full of shit! I will not suffer your Q people after this. Because you're lying! You're full of shit! All of it, dude! And I'm sick of it! I'm not knocking people that are into Q. I'm just telling you. Oh, he's part of a larger thing of Q. Is he Q? I understand magical powers. I'm at you with your wizard powers. Oh no, from some small part of the larger Q, you don't know, Burris. We're now learning the secret of Q power. He is a Q priest, is a religion. Q told us that Hillary was in a prison. He's a well-meaning person, but he's a lightweight. Jake the Barbarian, I guess, was his earlier incantation or incarnation. We have Q on the line. Q shaman. Listen, you're a Q wizard. A Q shaman. You are a shamanic wizard. We get that. A Q shaman. Go ahead, Q shaman.
You keep interrupting me.
Because you're lying! You're full of shit! I will not suffer your Q people after this. Because you're lying! You're full of shit! All of it, dude! And I'm sick of it! Q is like people that look in clouds. One sees a giraffe, one sees an elephant. I just know the military intelligence. The almighty Q Lord, and you are his priest. I don't know if he's for real or whether he's higher than a kite. And it's always, oh, there's energy. So you got a bunch of Q-tards into the Capitol. Oh. Q told us that Trump was invincible. You said he was the Messiah. Trump's a regular guy. He's not Jesus Christ. They'll never, when they're wrong, say they're wrong. What? We have Q on the line. Q shaman. Listen, you're a Q wizard. A Q shaman. You are a shamanic wizard. We get that. A Q shaman. Really? No, you're full of crap.
You keep interrupting me.
Because you're lying. You're full of shit. I will not suffer your Q people after this. Because you're lying. You're full of shit. All of it, dude. And I'm sick of it.
What the fuck, bro?
Alright. Oop, nope, stop. Nope, don't play it. Nope. Nope.
Keep interrupting.
Stop. There you go. I thought we would start off with that while I made sure everything's all good to go and send out a tweet on my Twitter and all that. So it looks like all of our things are connected. Unironically or not, or whatever the word you want to use, my Twitter has not connected for a long time now. So nobody can ever go on my not my Twitter, my Facebook. Nobody ever can watch me live on Facebook anymore. And I used to actually get a few people watching on Facebook from friends of family and all that. So that's kind of sad that I no longer get those views as much as I used to. I'm going to look down occasionally or go to this tab because I thought everything would be loaded and ready to go to show you some footage from my university and just what's going on around here, because those who don't know, I do live in Texas and there is a massive snowstorm that has gone through the state and is still going through probably, because I've heard it's supposed to maybe rain here in the future or continue low temperatures, so the snow could possibly be staying around. So hopefully at some point throughout this the stream or whatnot, we'll be able to load up that video so that we can watch the footage I come up with walking around campus today. So that could break up kind of the major topic I have or I want to discuss for today's video. So once again, I might be looking down at my phone because my phone is where it's loading from, and I have my regular YouTube up here to check on percentage in case I need to go off of there. So hopefully I don't look too much down at the phone, but I do want to make sure we can get onto that as soon as it loads. But like I said, it'll probably just be a break later on in the stream for today and whatnot. But yep, looks like we're all good on platforms. DLive looks like it has not connected, but that is okay. I don't from DLive either. But we have our Twitch connected, so that's really the main one as far as where I get most of my viewership from nowadays. But once again, I'll give a quick shout out to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is an individual group of content creators, and kind of their main goal in what they do is provide news or culture, I guess you could call it culture content. And the purpose of that is to give their own perspectives from basically people who are you. So a lot of times we get our news from mainstream media sources or people that don't really live on the same sort of like income you live or go through the same sort of struggles you go through on a daily basis. So freedomscoop.com is a group of basically regular people that have got together to talk about news on their shows and make content and go about reasonings from that point. And there's several shows on freedomscoop.com, and you can check out the Generational Gap, as they will be streaming tonight with, they call it shooting the shit, where they just look at some funny videos. So it's not really super serious, but it's a good way to kind of start off the week, especially if you had a bad week. We also have Jay Edgar, and he does a daily news stream in the mornings. I believe it's 7:30 Central Time, where he goes over all of the headlines from yesterday and any news that is recent from the day before, and talks about the major topics and everything relating to those news stories. So I'd highly recommend checking Jay Edgar out as well. And then I would recommend checking out Stephen Edgar. He talks about the major topics, and he also does a daily show as well, where he talks about the news and everything relating to trying to figure out exactly what is going on, or what he thinks is important, what he wants to laugh at, whatever. It's all of those sort of topics. But either way, that is important as well, as I have to drag over this YouTube, because for some reason my Safari does not want to connect to doesn't want to connect to the major doesn't want to connect to my YouTube, where I have all my other chats up on my monitor. So I don't know why it does that, but unfortunately that is just the way it is. So I wanted to make sure I have YouTube up as well, just in case somebody wants to comment on YouTube and give their feedback. And I don't know why that's not working. Okay, well, that's great. I'm going to get my first source back up here. It was basically why we care about the government, or why we should care about the government. But it was from the White House directly. Care about local government. I think that's what I searched. Because it was a good site to give the overview of how the government structure works. But if not, we might just have to cancel it out. Even though I clicked the link on the YouTube, which I copied directly, and it didn't link it up. So that is very weird. But not sure why that works. We'll just search this. We'll search this. Because I wanted to give just a very quick overview of the government. And branches. It's very annoying that didn't do that. That didn't work. Very annoying. No, it wasn't this. Oh well, we'll just have to cancel it out. Basically, it just talked about the government branch through the executive branch, the legislative branch, and so on and so on. And was just giving like very brief outlines to what those branches were and what exactly they mean, or whatever words you want to use. So just a very basic kind of high school, junior high level content, or junior level refresher to what exactly government means, or what you should value as government or whatnot. And I just thought it was going to be a good thing to refresh just for anyone that maybe is a little bit confused to how the government works, our government structure. But just that's the pleasures of doing live streams. Sometimes you can't always predict exactly what's going to happen. So somehow that link got lost, and the one I put in the description didn't work. So partly my fault, or all my fault, depending on how you view that. But I thought I was going to quickly mention this app that I discovered through doing some research about local governments. Because oftentimes I feel like local government can be almost intimidating for a lot of people because you don't necessarily know how to think about it. Because you could think of it in this way. When you're a mass media company, or you're a media company, or you're somebody that covers news, it's much easier to cover news when you're talking about the President of the United States of America rather than covering the news of somebody who's an individual governor or an individual group of people like the Legislator or the Congress of the state or whatnot. So it's much easier to put focus onto one person at being at the very top of government than it is to put focus on a group of people that really have more of an impact when you talk about what happens in your state. Because you very well could make the argument that your local government and who you have in local positions, your local representative, your local senators, your local governor, your local whatever you want to use. Your people, even the people on your educational board, have an impact to what happens and what laws and how things are done in your particular county, your particular area of where you live. And then you even get to the higher of that branch, your state branch, where you get into people who have an impact over the state laws and what gets passed in your state. And those are huge because those state impacts have a very big role into what happens and what gets passed and blah, 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 blah. So if you're talking about something that has a tremendous impact to how you live your daily life, it's more to do with the impact and local politics in your local legislator, your local representative, your senators. They have more of an impact on laws and how you live your life in whatever state you live in. And you could argue that's even more than the actual executive branch and the person that's on the very top of that executive branch being the president himself, in this case, Joe Biden. Now, before I start to get comments saying, well, that's not really true because the executive branch can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, blah, 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 and the states really can't do that. Because oftentimes, especially when you talk about certain states out there, they have a very slow process to what bills actually get done or what gets passed and blah, 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 blah. So, especially in the case of Texas, the way they have their legislators set up, the way they have your local politics set up, the way they have the process to make a bill in Texas or to get a bill passed in Texas is a very long, slow, tedious process. So that is something that I think Texas has especially done because it's more of a conservative leading state. So they want to make sure that in the overall scope of government, the government doesn't become too big and the individual Texan still has an impact or still has a role onto what happens in his politics or in his life in living in Texas. So anyway, but the reason I brought up this website in this app is because I actually think it's a very good app or a very good idea to at least try to hold your representatives accountable by what bills they get passed. So there is this app called Countable, and you can download it to your smartphone. And no, I'm not endorsed or paid by this app or by any means. But basically, it's a new political app that talks about issues of government and what's happening in government, as well as what that person voted for in favor or in not favor of the bill. As you can see here, Countable is a political news app that aims to keep users aware of the issues that are happening in government, receives subsequent nonpartisan summaries of the latest news, and views decisions that are against a particular argument. Disseminate your own opinions and issues without being influenced by any particular party. If you want to filter and categorize content that's relevant to news you're interested in, create your own action center, save all the information in one place, and share it with your cohort to spread more awareness. Have a deep concern you would like to adjust to a politician, 3D touches an app icon, and have Accountable provide a hefty list of representative names along with any additional contact information you might need to get their attention. Send in a video message or simply call them to go on the phone. Either way, the app will make sure that your opinions don't go ignored. So it's a good way to keep track of what's happening in news as at a national level and even a statewide level, as well as giving you a chance to contact your local representative or stay in touch with somebody you think would be necessary to stay in touch with in your state politics and whatnot. And it is a very important deal and something that I think a lot of people should be paying more attention to, especially since the whole purpose of this video is arguing that you should pay more attention to your local politics, maybe even more than you would pay attention to the spokesperson of the United States being Donald Trump, or being Joe Biden himself. I keep wanting to say Donald Trump, but we are past Donald Trump. But we'll check back here, make sure I haven't missed anything. Oh, hello, Jimmy. And yes, thank you again. I saw your Discord message a couple of days ago, but thank you again, Jimmy. I highly appreciate that. Hopefully you're having a good day over there and having a good college semester or whatnot. College can be pretty rough, but I don't know about you, but my school canceled till Wednesday. They canceled Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So really, I don't have anything to do, and teachers are moving dates back because they fear that the internet may go out or power might go out or whatever. So the school's moving assignments back and everything. So I'm kind of just like, okay, well, I wonder what I should be doing. So I'll probably be streaming a lot more these next couple days compared to what I usually am doing and sitting in my room trying to get stuff done or procrastinating. So that's kind of fun. Anyway, but yeah, you're in online, so you may not be having your school being canceled if it's on a different state. I didn't think about that. But anyway. But the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about, and we talked about a little bit, we being my co-host and I on getting the answers, talked about a little bit on our last show, and that basically being the concept of why do politicians lie? Was the question we had, and we shared many ideas throughout why we thought that politicians lied. And one of the main common themes that we had throughout this entire process here, really, was that it didn't seem like politicians felt that they needed to hold themselves accountable in a large way. And what I mean by that is the politicians felt like if they lied, it didn't really have that much of an impact because they were still going to be voted in. They were still going to have their laws getting passed. They didn't fear that by lying to their constituents, by lying to the people that vote them in, that they would lose their job, even if it is a huge lie. And some people are kind of comparing it as an example to what AOC did recently in her hour-long video to Instagram, where she talked about that she was in the Capitol building and feared for her life, blah, blah, blah. You probably have all heard about that story. And I don't know if that is really fully true to what mostly conservative media is talking about, and that AOC was kind of doing a similar thing, feeling like by lying to the people that voted for her, or to the people of America to gain sympathy points, to gain pathos, to gain emotional points, rather than actually telling the truth to what happened. And I don't know, like I said, if that is a fully true claim or not, but I do think that it has some truths to it, because I don't really think that she felt by over-exaggerating what happened, which may not necessarily be a lie, but she was definitely reacting a lot more extreme to other people. And once again, everybody's different, so you can definitely take that angle to this whole approach of what happened. But even if you take the most positive outlook to what AOC did, you could say that she was at least over-exaggerating to her constituents, or to the people that voted for her, and some people might find that as being something that is very wrong and should never be done, blah, 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 and go on from there. So I don't think that she necessarily felt like she was lying to her constituents or anything like that. So, but if you take that logic, or if you believe that sort of process or that sort of idea, then it is very possible to think that what AOC was doing was simply, she did it simply because she did not fear the loss of her job. So I hope I'm making sense there. But basically the whole process of why I brought AOC as an example was, even if you take the most positive outlook to what she did, she still was at least over-exaggerating to her people. And some constituents and some people that watched that video thought that it was pretty much an outright lie. And you may not believe that yourself, but a lot of people do. But either way, I do not see AOC losing her job as a representative in what district she represents, because her district is very highly blue, very highly Democratic, and she's also a very popular senator or very popular representative at her job. So the idea that she's going to lose her job over what she did is probably very unlikely. So I do think that is kind of why I brought up that example when we were talking about that topic. But before we get into this next video here by my friend Anna Votis and my co-host, and that's kind of why I brought it up, we were talking about the whole idea that ultimately the only way politics is going to change for the better is if politicians start to feel afraid that if they lie to their constituents, if they lie to the public, that their job is at stake, and they will no longer be able to represent their constituents because they have lied to the constituents, no matter what type of lie or whatever it is. It doesn't matter, because most often politicians lie in a couple different ways, and we also kind of talked about that. And you can view it on any of my channels as well if you want to listen to the whole thing, because I actually thought it was a very good video. And I'm probably going to put it on my podcast as well for anybody that listens to those. But I thought it was a very, very good video, and we kind of broke it down into several different ways. But sometimes politicians lie because they don't necessarily have the experience or knowledge in saying something. So they lie, but they don't necessarily know that they have lied because they don't know all the details to what they are talking about. You, as a politician, there's no way you can know every single detail to every single policy and to every single concern your constituents or your people that vote for you might have. In other words, there's no way you can be an expert in everything. So simply, politicians sometimes lie because they think they know a detail of something, but in reality that detail is wrong or outright not true at all. So that's one way a lot of politicians lie. But also, as I just recently talked about, a lot of politicians lie because they do not fear that by lying, their job is at stake, because they are in a solid blue district, or they're in a solid red district, or they're even in a mixed district, and just feel like by the act of lying, they don't necessarily fear for that will be the reason that they lose their job because of that. But a lot of times, also politicians lie because there's countless reasons, and I'm not going to talk about all of them because I do want you to go back and watch that video because it'll give me more views. You know, you got to do that good life on sharing content. Oh man. Anyway, But one of the biggest things we kind of went away with was the idea about how politics and how the voting process works. And Anna Voltes, the co-host, is very strict on the idea of voting. Most people, when they talk about voting and wanting to improve the situation, wanting to improve the idea of how voting is done, talk about that they want more people to go and vote. They want the turnout rate in America to be increased so that the amount of people, the amount of representation of who shows up to vote, the amount of numbers, the amount of turnout rate will be the thing that changes politics, because there'll be more people knowledgeable of the political system, because especially in the United States of America, turnout rate is very low when it comes to politics, within 50%, even sometimes lower percentages than half of the people going out to vote, especially when you talk about midterms. And that's another reason why I'm having this video, because in 2022, there's going to be the midterms. And midterms happen in between the elections of president, and that is why they are called midterms. But historically, people have not showed up as highly for midterms as they show up for presidential elections. And that's very, very, very big deal when you look about how things get passed and how things get done in government. Because as I've introduced this whole video, the idea about how and what you should be caring about for government is the very nature of local politics matters, maybe even more than the executive branch and Joe Biden himself. And I'm going to be saying that a lot of times throughout this entire process. So that's one way that people view trying to change the culture around voting, or trying to encourage more people to show up, blah, 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 blah. The second way is more of Anna Voltes' style and Anna Voltes' approach to reducing the impact on how voting is done. He takes the idea that there should be only educated voters. So in other words, if you're somebody that isn't as knowledgeable to the whole situation, you shouldn't vote because you don't know about that candidate or about the impact of voting for that candidate would have. So he's in favor of having a lesser turnout but a more knowledgeable turnout in representative. And he explains that a lot better, and he'll probably even disagree with me a little bit on what I said about his approach, because he's very, very particular in how he wants to identify and how he wants you to view his idea and his approach to that concept and whatnot. But he may even talk about that in this video we are about to play. I didn't watch all of the video because I kind of wanted to watch it live and give my interaction about this whole concept. But he gets in the idea of a popularist candidate, basically being the nature of the idea that you're a candidate that represents everyone does seem like a good idea. You would almost by nature think that a populist candidate, somebody that's favored by the mass majority, would favor the mass majority needs and be able to help the people who have voted that candidate in. But in a lot of ways, having a popularist candidate isn't necessarily a good idea and something that should be tried or something that should be done, because it can leave a lot of things going downhill. Because most often, what everybody sees as being the smartest situation isn't actually the situation, or isn't actually the law, or isn't actually the process that should be done, because they don't ultimately understand how the actual politics works and how the actual system works. And that is a major problem when it comes to local governments, especially in the United States. I don't know a lot about international politics and how their international communities work and how they pass laws from their individual places. But in America, states have a huge impact to what happens and to everything that goes around in that process. And hello, Barry Beer. I am, hopefully you're having a good day and everything. Having a good Monday, good start to the week. And you also asked, wait, are you a leftist or a rightist? See, this is a question I also think is a little bit wrong when it comes to politics today, because ultimately I think it's bad to identify yourself as fully a part of one party or not, because I think that's why we have such a hard time meeting in the middle and trying to pass laws that both sides like, because the idea that one side likes this law and the other side hates it, but it still gets passed, what are you doing? You're not doing anything. You're just hurting the situation. The idea of compromising and finding something in the middle is what we need to be focusing on, because that something in the middle is how we are going to better the situation for everybody. But if I have to identify as a certain party, I would say that I'm probably libertarian, and leaning slightly conservative and slightly progressive on some issues. I haven't taken a political compass test recently, but I'm definitely leaning more and more towards the Libertarian Party, more than any other party out there. So I'm not necessarily really in the middle, but I'm still kind of trying to figure out exactly where I land up when it comes to politics. But I do have a problem with the idea that you have to be this party or that party, and you can't be anything else, and you can't be functional when you're talking about those things. Now, I'm going to start this video, but I just noticed that I got a call from my dad, so I'm going to have to answer that. But I'll be right back, and I'll start this video. I have listened to some of it, and this is what I was going to play next. So I'll play this video, and I'll come back and after I finish the call, but I want to make sure it's not an emergency or anything, because as I was talking about the beginning of this episode here, in Texas we have a whole bunch of things going on weather-wise, and you probably saw it on Twitter if you're on Twitter or anything, but there's a big ice storm, and I'm trying to upload this video so that I can show you some of the stuff when it comes to those points and everything like that. But I'm going to play this video, but I will answer your question, and then I'll start the video. On the issue of abortion, are you pro-abortion or against it? See, that's a very tough question, because I am a Catholic Christian, even though I'm definitely not the perfect Christian or perfect Catholic by any means, even though they're kind of the same thing when it comes to those issues, really. You could get into the details and why they're different, but really we're not talking about that. So from that perspective, I don't agree with abortion at all. But from the policy perspective, from the political perspective, I can see some ideas to why it is good, and you could even argue from an ethics perspective why some people would be in favor of it. Now, if you want me to give you a concise perspective, I would say that I'm not in favor of abortion unless the mother is going to die giving birth, or it was an instance of the R word, the 4-letter R word, which I don't really think Twitch would allow me to say, but I'm pretty sure you know what I am referencing there. So that's kind of my policy when it comes to abortion. But if I were to run as a candidate in politics, like in the Libertarian Party, where they're very much focused on individual rights, an individual having the right to do things, and government shouldn't really get in the way, you could say that personally I am against it, but I can see why people as a policy perspective would be for it. What if the baby ends up being special needs? Well, I am a special needs teacher. I'm getting my degree in special education, so I'm kind of disagree with you on that one as well, because really I don't think that even if your baby does have some sort of special needs or is going to require more attention, that you should just simply get rid of it or anything like that. Now, you may not be talking about that, but I am much more of a favor of abortion than I am in favor of killing the baby before it is born. But I can understand the perspective that if you require or make sure that somebody has to have the baby and it can't be aborted, and they live in a situation that is economically bad, socially bad, isn't in a good environment, and the mother, maybe the father, if the situation is bad, I could see the how having a special needs baby along with it could bring multiple problems. And abortion isn't, or sorry, not abortion, adoption process in America, even when you're talking about American adoption and not even international adoptions, is a very complex process. So a lot of people that try to oversimplify and say, well, you just give it to adoption if you don't want it, but it still needs to be born, need to notice and need to respect the idea that the process of adoption is complicated in itself. So before you can even necessarily go that route, I think you need to change the process of how adoption works in the United States and make it a little bit easier for mothers or for families that can't necessarily support the baby in the ways it should be supported. Now, like I said, I'm going to play this video. Hopefully everybody will stay, but I want to make sure that it wasn't a emergency or anything. So I'm going to play this video from Anna Votis.
I'm going to talk a bit about my anti-populism. Now, there's a number of different ways people can oppose populism. However, I particularly come from a perspective of political realism. So rather than, let's say, a more traditionalist perspective. So I decided to explain why I don't think populism will lead to positive political outcomes, how I don't think it will lead to positive political outcomes, and also how populism, in my view, is actually used in society. So those are some 3 categories, and to represent these 3 categories, I've got a total of 9 points here. Now, I could make more. However, I think these are, I believe, the most straightforward arguments that could come to the top of my head by simply thinking about populism. So, first point, popular policies do not equal good or effective policies. So, I think that this point is, in my view, very important. And I think that even if this were the only point, it would be sufficient to, in my view, to discredit populism as a viable political movement. And that is because just because something is popular doesn't mean that it is good or effective. Now, that being said, good and effective things can be popular, and sometimes they are popular. However, I think that looking to the people to examine whether something is good or effective is less reliable than having a higher standard, a moral standard, perhaps an epistemic standard, a system of analyzing events. There's a number of different ways that you can come up with policies that are more reliable and more consistent in the long term than simply looking at what the people want. Now, that being said, I'm not saying that the wants of the people are politically irrelevant, because I do think that they are relevant, especially when it concerns the needs of a people. I do think that that is indeed politically relevant and should be addressed. However, if we're going to put everything up to a question of whether it's popular or unpopular, I don't think that that is the most reliable way to produce a stable political system. So the second point, popular opinion can change easily according to modes or manipulation. And when I say modes, I don't mean modes as in the different modes of a machine. What I mean is mode as in the fashion, the trends. The word mode is used in the term modernity. Mathematically speaking, when you have a mode, it is the most common number in a set. So what I'm saying here is that popular opinion changes, and it can change in the same way that fashion can change. It can change in the same way that popular music changes. And it can also be manipulated, that outside forces or forces that are not acting in the interests of the people can go in and produce policies that can become popular while also acting against the interests of the people. In that way, I do believe that populism runs into this problem. It is because saying that you are a populist can literally mean anything, because what the people want can change from time to time, and it can be contradictory over a longer period of time and can lead you into completely different directions. And this also leads into another problem. The larger a society is, the easier it is to manufacture consent. So I should have put a comma there. But anyway, what this means is that if you take a small group of people and you ask them to agree on something, it's pretty easy to tell who agrees and who disagrees. If you have a larger group of people, you end up with techniques that obfuscate who actually agrees with a position. You end up with, because not everybody is in communication with every other person in the group, because there's simply too many people to do that, or they are too far geographically, and even if technologically speaking that geographic limit is removed, there's still too many voices for it to be accomplished that people can understand truly what everybody else in the group is thinking. And this isn't to say that knowing what everybody else wants is important to populism, but it is to say that if you don't know whatever people want, you can be manipulated into thinking that other people want certain things that they don't actually want. And this is accomplished through a number of different techniques, and I might talk about this later, but there's ideas, for example, of the silent majority. That's an idea that essentially is a popular appeal, saying that certain ideas are popular, but the people who do hold these popular ideas aren't very outspoken about these popular ideas, and therefore, even though they do constitute a portion of the majority, they are silent in that. And that can lend to an illusion in regards to the popularity of certain ideas. And the fact is that some people are bound to bandwagon based on that. People want to jump onto ideas that are popular. People want to be part of the in-group. And if you manipulate what people think is the in-group, you can actually use that to manufacture consent. You can use that to construct this idea that a certain political movement is strong and popular, and it can become strong and popular simply due to the idea that it is strong and popular. So that's a manipulation tactic that a populist system can easily fall victim to, and therefore is another reason why I oppose populism. Now, moving on to a different idea, an idea on more the structural disadvantages of populism. Politics is a skilled profession. Now, this is controversial in some circles. Some people have this idea of a farmer then becoming a politician, similar to how the ancient Romans had this idea of farmers becoming great generals and statesmen. But in reality, the more time you invest into studying something, generally speaking, the more skilled and adept you will be at doing it. And there's a lot of people that have this opposition to career politicians. However, as society becomes more complex, it becomes necessary to have more specialized people to take care of more specialized tasks. And one of these fields that is becoming increasingly more specialized is politics. And this is similar to how medicine is becoming increasingly more specialized, where it used to be you'd have maybe one or two types of physicians hundreds of years ago, and now you can probably, if you're in the field, you can probably name 100 different types of medical professionals. So in that sense, you see that as skilled professions develop, as the body of knowledge grows, it also becomes necessary to understand that not everybody is equally skilled at accomplishing certain tasks, and having people who train to be skilled at a particular task is better than simply including everybody on that. And I'm not saying this to be anti-democratic, okay? I'm just saying that not everybody's opinions are equal in relation to politics. And I understand that some people like to say politics isn't an exact science. That may be true in some ways. However, realistically speaking, some decisions are better than others. Some policies are better than others at accomplishing certain goals. And having people that know which ones are better than others is better than having people that have to be persuaded on a surface level to believe that certain ideas are better than others. So, moving further, populism subverts the division of labor, and this is adding on to the other idea. Since politics is a skilled profession, just like medicine, just like law, as society develops and becomes more complex, as I mentioned, there are more types of doctors than there used to be. There are more types of medical professionals than there used to be. There are more types of lawyers than there used to be. As society becomes more complex, it also becomes increasingly necessary to divide certain types of labor, because fields of knowledge become so large that it's not possible for any one person to have a full and complete knowledge of all of the human experience, all of human expertise. Maybe a very long time ago that might have been possible, but as things become more complex, that's no longer possible. And that being said, therefore, it makes sense to decide that some people can train to be better suited at making decisions than others, because if we were to simply say that everybody's opinion was valid, then we get to the next point. Populism dilutes expertise in decision making. Because as the division of labor increases, the chances of someone being proficient at making a decision in a certain field statistically decrease, because there are more fields. There are more fields of expertise, and as the number of fields of expertise increase, it becomes more difficult to find someone who is an expert in that field, because it becomes necessary to have more and more experts on different topics. And this is where the division of labor comes back in, because that is why we have a division of labor, because it would be incredibly inefficient if everybody had to be skilled at all the same things. We, as a society, as a civilization, as I say, the division of labor is foundational to civilization. As a civilization, we would not be able to progress technologically. And if we are not able to progress technologically and philosophically, then we end up in a situation where, from a realistic political perspective, we run into a disadvantage against potential adversaries who are able to progress technologically and philosophically and are able to, therefore, defeat our society due to the greater complexity of their society. So we have to think in concepts of power dynamics. So speaking of power dynamics, number 7, popular sovereignty does not correspond to real power dynamics. What does that mean? That means that the idea that the people are sovereign in a country, the idea of popular sovereignty, while a lot of people believe it, the fact that a lot of people believe it doesn't make it true. And this has to do also with the division of labor, because not everybody is concerned with political events. Not everybody is interested in becoming involved politically. Not everybody is willing to spend the time to be politically engaged. And this leads to a situation where the number of people who are therefore actively involved in politics is lower than the total population. But then you actually shave off the people that actually hold power. And in a society where people hold power, where there is a hierarchy, where there is leadership, where you have archons rather than anarchy, which is more efficient, by the way, due to the division of labor. The people who hold power are generally more powerful than the people who don't hold power, even in a collective sense. Now, that's not saying that if everybody not holding power were to get together and rebel, that they wouldn't be able to overthrow the people who are holding power. But it is to say that, historically speaking, compulsory empires that rule through fear, through strength, are capable of ruling larger populations than their ruling class. In other words, tyranny is more effective than anarchy, historically speaking. That is to say...
Alrighty, I am back. Sorry about that. Looks like all of my people left. Oh, I'm sad now. But anyway, thank you, Bear, for stopping by and talking about that. I don't know if you were being funny or not, but I actually very much disagree with your last point in a lot of ways, or almost all the ways, really. But, yeah. So anyway, I'm back, so we'll listen to some of this video. And I wonder what your thoughts are about it. He's my co-host on my show that I have every Thursday. And oftentimes he can be very smart in an educational way. And basically what I mean by that is he gives you a lot of information. And a lot of times I don't know all the details to what he is talking about. So I'll pick like one point out of everything he said and talk about that point and give my feedbacks or everything about that. But I just find it kind of funny because I almost have to think about it, and maybe a couple days later I'll then remember the exact details of what I wanted to say, or some feedback against what he said, or maybe something else I thought of about what he said, blah blah blah. But he's almost very hard to argue against because he just knows a lot about certain issues and a lot about his way he thinks, a lot about how he approaches, how he talks, and how he communicates what he thinks. He's a very philosophical minded guy. It's sometimes kind of hard to argue right away against him or talk about claims that he was talking about. So I find that kind of interesting. So I don't know if y'all ultimately like what he's saying in this video or not. But I thought we'll play a little bit more, and I'll be interested, like I said, to hear anyone's thoughts of the particulars of the video and everything. So anyway, I'll continue playing it.
That if you have a society where one half decides to get rid of leaders and have an anarchy, and another side produces a tyranny, and they have a disagreement and conflict erupts, the tyrant is more likely to conquer the anarchic society than the anarchy is likely to depose the tyrant. Similarly, in an anarchic society, there is a decent likelihood of the development of tyranny. Now, actual anarchic societies are extremely rare and short-lived, as you would expect. And there are a number of societies that people say are anarchic, but really aren't. So I'm not really going...
One society that was Tehran, Mexico. And the last time I looked, when I made a video analysis over a documentary called The Monopoly on Violence, it talked about Tehran, Mexico. It mentioned several things that of what they did. And basically what Tehran, Mexico did, hopefully I'm pronouncing it right, it's been a while since I had to say it, was talking about the idea of getting rid of politicians and getting rid of political parties in their system of government. There's still people that run the particular area or the particular location of Tehran, Mexico, but they're not elected by a party or anything. It's more just people that rose up in the absence of having somebody who represents a political party or represents the ideal politician or whatever you ultimately want to talk about when it comes to those points. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And the last time I looked, they were still a functioning place in the Mexico. And so that would be an example of an anarchic society that is existing now and still is existing in the war. And yes, it's not in the United States of America, so maybe for some people it would be hard comparing things that happen internationally to what happens in the United States. But that's a very close-minded perspective to things that happen and to ideas that you should have when you look at things to compare. So if Tehran, Mexico is the same way it looked the last time I read about it, then that is an example of living anarchy in a society that does exist. And now that would kind of disprove this point, but we'll continue on to see what he has to kind of say.
Going to get into that debate, but realistically speaking, having leaders is more effective than not having leaders, and sovereignty is usually held within power structures as opposed to within a general population. Functional sovereignty, that is. Now, people have symbolic sovereignty. However, look at any country that symbolically places sovereignty in the hands of the people, and you will see that the functions of sovereignty are indeed held by the power structures. And you might say, well, the people in power are elected by the people. Then the question then becomes, why is it that in liberal democracies where populism should be strongest, okay, the liberal democracies where populism should be strongest fail to satisfy populists? Which is interesting, because in a liberal democracy, there is very little obstacle for a populist movement to rise. There's very little obstacle for the will of the people to be expressed. However, why is it that in liberal democracies, populists still feel like they're not actually expressing the will of the people? And I think this is very telling. This is sort of like socialism. Okay. Because in socialism, you have a scenario where someone tries to achieve socialism, they change the political system, and then later on, people will complain that this isn't actually socialism, we're not actually moving towards socialism. Why aren't we moving towards socialism? Something is wrong, the system has been subverted in some way, we're not actually moving towards socialism. The same is true for populism in liberal democracies. The populists think that if they get their vote, they think that if they are able to express their will, that they will be able to actuate the will of the people in their government and in their society. But factually speaking, it doesn't end up that way, or at least not in the way that many of them imagine that it would. And this speaks to the failure of populism as a political movement. And why does it fail? Now, that being said, sometimes, on rare occasions, populists do get the person in charge that they would like to have in charge. However, I will mention that in reality, populism is a tool used by politicians to gain and hold power by using the will of the people as a justification. So when people complain, let's say in the United States, that the Democrats and Republicans aren't very populist, then what I say is, well, why is it that the Republicans use language like the silent majority? Why is it that both Democrats and Republicans use populist language to indicate that they are on the side of the people, that they are expressing the will of the people, and they...
Stop. Okay. Well, if you think about it, any person, and I believe I even said this on the last stream where Eno Voltes kind of brought up populism, and I kind of want to say he did this video because he wanted to talk more about this issue, and we didn't really have time because we tried to keep those videos around an hour to an hour and a half, and we were already running at upwards of about an hour and 20 minutes for that particular video. But I want to say this was one of the big things he brought up, and ultimately I argue that any candidate wants to make the people seem like they are populist, or they are for the people, they represent the people, they are the politician of the people. That's the idea of the whole thing. So even major parties, despite the massive impact they have on the political system we have in the United States, which is really a two-party system. Yes, there's a chance for Libertarian Party, the Green Party, the Constitutional Party, the whatever party that there's an ongoing list of, like the Tea Party I think still exists. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. But the main point I'm trying to say here is, even if you are a mainstream politician, meaning that you fall as a Republican or you fall as a Democrat, you will still want people to value you and see you as the politician that is for the people. So the idea of that also can go against the idea of populism as the approach, because if that's the goal of populism, then we're not really changing anything. And the idea that you're just popular, or you're worshipped, or you're thought of as good by people isn't necessarily a good thing, especially when it comes to government and when it comes to politics, because you should not be valuing these people as heroes, or valuing these people as somebody that you should respect, or whatever words you want to use, because they are ultimately not there to have your respect and not there to gain your respect, even if they say that they are. By the nature of being a politician, they are not.
Win elections, but it doesn't actually happen. The answer is that, number one, these people do claim to be populists, and are in a country where they do have a liberal democracy. But what's actually happening is that since populism is, realistically speaking, not an effective way to get consistent policies, actual politicians, most politicians who are in power, understand this, and therefore the most useful populism is to them is as a tool to persuade people to vote for them, to persuade people to manufacture consent to their policies,
what I was saying. Exactly what I was saying.
To persuade people to demonstrate some type of popularity.
Hello there.
And that is the fundamental failing of populism.
And didn't join
that
when
is
I was
the
on
failure
break.
of populism.
Hang on.
That as much as people
Stop.
want...
Hopefully you weren't there when I was on break and whatnot. It's hard to tell on Trovo exactly when people join or not. Maybe I'm just being a boomer and can't see, but thank you for stopping by. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to ask. Right now we're watching a video by co-host Anna Voltes where he talks about the idea of populism, and he is somebody who's against populism, isn't in favor of it. So he does not like that whole idea, so we're just listening to kind of his beliefs around that, because I do think that it has a very big role to how people view politics in general, and the idea that ultimately you have to argue on either changing the way voting is done in the United States to make people feel more empowered or more whatever big word you want to use, or you have to change the culture of how people view politics, and that kind of goes in the idea that usually when people talk about politics, that they talk about someone who is popular, someone that's in this kind of mainstream type of atmosphere or idea, they are more probably likely to favor that person and to vote for that person again. And it's not always a good thing, because especially when you talk about politics, many people in general tend to argue the idea that the only way that we can ultimately change things for the better when it comes to politics is the idea that we have term limits and we reduce the amount of time someone can serve in their position at state government or in their position as a senator, which yes is a state position, but you get what I'm saying here. A lot of people argue on the factor of term limits, and I don't ultimately think that matters so much when you talk about populism, and if you're someone that is for populism, because even if there are term limits, the person who is popular and somebody that is worshipped or somebody that is extremely well liked by the people is going to win however many times they are allowed to win, even if you have term limits. So the idea of just having term limits would reduce the amount of times you see that person in politics. They couldn't be there for 15 years, but they could be there for 12 years. You know, you're not ultimately solving that issue.
Their politicians to represent them, or in a direct democracy, they want effective policies. The system of populism, the practice of populism, doesn't actually provide an effective way to get there from A to point B, which means it ends up being co-opted by other movements in between. And it has to be. And why does it have to be? Because popular policies don't equal good or effective policies. Popular opinion can change easily according to modes or manipulation. The larger a society is, the easier it is to manufacture popular consent. And politics is a skilled profession. Populism subverts the division of labor. Populism dilutes expertise in...
That's kind of one of the main things that was surprising about Joe Biden. And ultimately, I think the reason Joe Biden won was just because how unpopular Donald Trump is by a lot of people. Even somebody that doesn't ultimately follow politics that much still most likely has the belief that Donald Trump is a bad person, or Donald Trump is someone we shouldn't necessarily be trusting, compared to, say, somebody that may be right and follows politics, or whatever you want to say. So ultimately, what I mean by that argument is that ultimately the reason I think Joe Biden won the most was because just how badly Donald Trump was hated by the majority of people, even though both candidates still won the most amount of votes in American history. It just so happens Joe Biden had more than Donald Trump, so therefore he is president of the United States of America, and Donald Trump is not. But if you think about it, most populist type of candidates are somebody that is able to rally up the crowd, get somebody well-spoken, very knowledgeable, or seemingly knowledgeable. I would argue that most of these populist candidates aren't necessarily super knowledgeable, but seemingly knowledgeable, and somebody that's able to get the process, get people to vote, get people passionate to go in, get somebody fired up and ready to go in to vote. That is a populist candidate. And Joe Biden doesn't really fall into that because he didn't really campaign that much. He's not always the most well-spoken. He definitely has moments where his speeches are pretty good, and in the debates, for the most part, he was actually pretty good. Some of the moments weren't so good, but he definitely didn't seem like he was super lost in the debates compared to what some people were kind of expecting. But basically what I'm saying is Joe Biden doesn't ultimately really fall into a super populist type of candidate compared to, say, Bernie Sanders or AOC, or on the other side, Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham. These people being people that are favored by the majority of their party and seen as good people, or seen as people that we should be following or should be respecting, or whatever word you want to use. And ultimately that it is scary when it talks about politics, because as Anna Voltes was just saying here, is ultimately these candidates are skilled in their profession. So the people who are populist candidates, the people who gain the respect of having that title, are people that were able to motivate their party, people that were able to gain the system of politics. And that's not always the best approach to how we should be ultimately handling the way politics works. So I don't know if I'm making that exactly clear, so we'll continue this video because I'm sure Anna Voltes will be able to explain it a little bit better, since this is kind of more of a well thought out strategy or well thought out belief or idea that Anna Voltes does have.
In decision making, populism is an idealistic position competing in a real world. So in the realist, idealist dichotomy of ideologies, since populism falls onto the idealist side, but we live in a real world and not an ideal world, it has to be expressed through real events. It has to be converted into real policy. And when it is converted into real policy, it loses its ideal aspect and necessarily ceases to be populism and ends up becoming whatever the politicians want to peddle to the people.
So that's the end of Anna Voltes' video there. So hopefully y'all liked kind of what you heard from Anna Voltes there. I'd like his content because it's very well thought out and more thought-provoking type of content than anything else necessarily that I know of or have come across. And usually watching his videos, I have to think about things a little bit more, requiring me to challenge my beliefs I have. So I just like his content for that. And my snow video is up and ready to go now. So whenever we need a break, we can go to that. So I'm happy that that all got published while I was on the call with my dad. and listening to the video with you guys there. But we're going to get into the juiciness of the main topic here today. Not that that wasn't necessarily the main topic. I thought it gave good background to some of the concepts that are really at hand when you talk about how people view local politics and how people view local government. Because if I want anybody who's coming across my videos to take away one thing, I want them to take away the fact that you should be paying more attention to your local politics than you pay attention to the federal politics and the idea of Joe Biden and everything that he does. Because your local politics and what gets passed by your senators, your representatives, and so on is the thing that makes your life the way it is mostly. Now, federal politics do matter, meaning the president, as I've said already before, so you should pay attention to it, but I find a lot of people, especially when I talk to people who generally follow politics or don't really enjoy following politics, following that sort of crowd, that they know much more about what Joe Biden is doing, or much more about the major executive governments out there than they do what's actually happening in their backyard and laws that affect them. And I do think that that is a little bit of a problem. But we're going to start off by reading the Hill article here, Size Matters, the Case for Small Government. Long after today's hot-button political controversies fade into obscurity, our country will face the consequences of how we answer a major question that divides the political parties. Are we to have larger government providing more services from higher taxes, or smaller government providing less services with fewer taxes? Currently, the movement to expand government, accurately self-described as socialist, promotes a platform of government medicine, free college, generous welfare, strict regulation, and high taxes readily recognizable in Europe as social democratic policies. In recent of European economics suggest an adverse effect from continent's outsized government sector since 2010. The European Union has grown 1.4% annually, while the U.S. has averaged a 2.2% growth. Neither figure is good, but there is a clear and meaningful U.S. advantage. Though the power of combined growth, the U.S. rate would leave its citizens over 35% farther ahead of their European counterparts by the end of a 40-year working career. In the same period, the EU economics and government share of 48% compared with 40% for the US. Using current data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Europe's sluggishness has been attributed to many factors, but history provides perspective. European countries didn't always have sluggishness economics. From the 1960s to 1970s, today's blanket cases, Greece and Portugal were going at impressive annual rates of 7.7% and 6.9% respectively. Spain expanded 7.3% per year, while Austria, Belgium, Finland, and France all grew around 5%. Those historic rates are difficult to comprehend in light of recent growth rates under 1% for Greece, Portugal, and Spain, respectively, and under 2% for the others. This dramatic loss of economic vitality coincides with the expansion of Europe's social democratic welfare state since the early 1970s. 1/5 of the economic of Greece, Portugal, and Spain has shifted from the private sector to the public sector, as government expenditures doubled in their relative sizes. Austria, Belgium, Finland, and France all increased government by more than 1/10 of GDP, a jump in share from around 25% to roughly 50% for each. The negative effect on large government upon health is hardly limited to Europe. From 1960 to 1973, the U.S. grew 4.3% annually, with the government GDP share of 40% compared with today's more tepid growth and government share approaching 40%. When talks a little bit more. So this case kind of gives some article or some ideas about comparing European policies and politics to the United States policies and politics. And I do think that it was kind of good giving a generalized or a thoughtful perspective to the idea of bigger government versus lesser government. I don't know if lesser is necessarily a word, but I think you understand what I'm saying. And ultimately, that's also something that's going on in American politics more at a federal level, or more of a all-state issue and not a single state issue. I'm sure some states have more conflict between non-socialist and socialist, but in general, when you talk about a socialist argument, you're talking about at a federal level because they want higher taxes at a federal level, free education at a federal level, free healthcare for all at a federal level, and so on. So you're not ultimately talking about states per se. But I thought it was kind of good introducing this topic, because even if you are to pass these major political concepts like universal health care, it will still have to be involved through the state levels. In other words, just because the federal government mandates that you do this or requires by law that you do this, it's still up to the states a lot of times to figure out how they are going to go about doing so. So once again, that is also another reason why you should be valuing the states, your state politics, and not just always paying attention to what happens at the mass level of the executive branch. We're going to go to our next article here as it loads. This is by Real Clear Policy, and it talks about the case for local government. Because once again, if you're just now stumbling on to Twitch or wherever you're listening from, I'm making the argument that you should ultimately be paying more attention to your local governments than you are at the federal and high executive branch levels, being the President of the United States. So because of that, I'm trying to demonstrate multiple reasons why you should be paying more attention to local politics than federal politics. Nearly 3/4 of Americans trust our local government and Congress. Just 40% trust the country's legislative branch, the lowest of all major institutions in this country. It is also in 3 smaller governments located outside of Washington, D.C., where Americans perceive progress on the country's major challenges. So why do we often call to the distant reach of our capital to solve problems that are right in front of us? Americans trust our local governments because they are trusted with doing things we want, keeping us safe, educating our children, cleaning the streets, and while we have some say in who our nationally elected leaders are and what they do, it is hardly the sort of choice offered by nearly 36,000 local governments at the local level. We may vote with our feet as well as our ballots. It's time we gave our local a chance once again. The people and places closest to us where we tend to direct our care and our energy. They should enjoy the authority necessary for diverse citizens to pursue flourishing lives together. In the late 21st century, localism should be rallying cry for those who believe in government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So this phrase here is obviously something in the United States that is kind of a core value. It's also kind of the same core value as one vote. I just forgot the phrase. Basically, every one vote. I forget the exact phrase, but anyway, that is one of the core tenets, core beliefs of America, being that the government, although they rule over us or pass things for us, they are ultimately our employees or our perspectives to that person. One person, one vote. Yes, that's it. Thank you, Stick Poe. Yep, that's it. I'm like, I knew I knew half of it. I always do that, especially in conversations, not even on streams. That's why live streams are so much fun. Because I always forget like halfway through a lot of sentences on what I'm trying to say. So live streams makes it fun. Yeah, thanks for your help. But, yeah. So anyway, the whole idea about the one person, one vote, or the idea that government should be for the people is a core philosophy for a government. And I find that a lot of times, depending on who you ask in politics, gives you the perspective of what they come away thinking. So what I mean by that is, if you ask somebody that's on the progressive left, they ultimately feel like that the government for the people is false. The government has never been for the people. They only represent themselves. They're greedy. They only represent whites. They only represent whatever you keyword you want to use. And if you ask somebody who's more conservative, they always kind of throw out the phrase, "Yeah, the government works for us." The government is run by people, but they're supposed to be for the people. So it's kind of a weird thing. It's basically like hiring your boss. So if you're, sitting in an interview and you have to go through the process, you're like, okay, so, this is your time schedule. These are your hours. Why would you be a good employee? Basic interview questions. And you're like, okay, I like you. So I hired Joe. Now, the person you just hired now directly you work for that person in a large way. So it's kind of a weird process. It's like by voting for these politicians who obviously are people, we're putting them ahead of us, yet they are supposed to pass laws and do things for us that make us at the same level. So it's a very complicated part, and that is a large part to why people value the executive branch of politics so much, because it's the most obvious example to what happens. But once again, the executive branch very rarely does something that affects you as much as your local government and your local policies, even at the very, very county level, such as your education board for your school district, and that is where you live. Precisely, has more impact to do with what happens in your life and how you live your life than what Joe Biden does through an executive order. So it's a very interesting thing. Thank you for the happy birthday wish, Stick. I highly appreciate that. They work as your voice. Yes, that's supposed to be the purpose. That for politicians, that's supposed to be what happens. And obviously, there's many conflicts to how that doesn't happen. And that's why I kind of played the video at the start of this about populists, because mostly populist candidates aren't necessarily what you want, because they're most likely more to ignore you than, say, any other type of candidate out there. And you work for their paycheck. In a large way, yes, you do work for their paycheck, yes. Your tax money is ultimately what supports them as a United States Senator, or as the representative, or as the person who's on the school boards and such. Now, there are several positions, especially when you talk about the very local level, where they are volunteer-based, so they don't get paid for their job. But mostly when you think about state politics, you still think about representatives and senators, which is still at a pretty high level compared to when you talk about your individual county and where you live through the education board or the parks and recreation or whatever you ultimately want to say. But we'll continue on to see what they have to say in their essay here. Local governments are a living tradition within the political order set out in the Constitution. The founders recognized as a natural policy entry arising from Americans, I butchered that. Self-government depends on the active citizenry owning their own affairs. That is why American federalism, while formerly two-tiered, is practically three-tiered. Local government are constitutional subordinate to the states, but they reserve and preserve some legal and political autonomy, if not direct power. People are the ultimate source of power in this country, and exercise their power closest to the people. In contrast to go top-down, centralized authorities higher up in the governmental food chain, local governments are decentralized bottom-up policies. In this way, multiplicalities, along with the states, help devolve authority away from the federal government and keep power from becoming too centralized in Washington. So that's a good concept there for a kind of a very brief review of how state politics work. Because the United States, from its very creation, wanted to make sure that whoever represented them as the head person, the person who is in charge at the top of the ticket, the representative, the first person you think about, blah, 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 there's several many sentences you could say, but that person, they wanted to make sure wasn't the king and didn't have everything to do with how you lived. So in order to do that, they split apart roles in government, and that is why a lot of states have particular types of state politics. So in other words, they wanted to split apart the role that one person who ultimately is the most in charge and split that into individual representatives, individual senators, individual people that could represent the people of that state, so that once they go to Washington to pass these massive laws that make widespread legislation, or whatever you want to say, it represents that person or those constituents that live in the state. And that's a very, very important deal, and something that is very key when it comes to American politics, and something you have to ultimately understand. And that is why later in this video, we're going to be going over the legislator, because whatever you think about the legislator, they have a massive impact to what happens in your state. And depending on what state you live, depends on how big of an impact the legislator has, because some states have more of a authoritative legislator, meaning that they can get more things done, compared to other states where their legislator is more reduced in their power, but maybe the governor instead has a little bit more power, or vice versa. But the legislator is a very big deal, and depending on what state you're in, the legislator is in session. I live in Texas, so right now the Texas legislator is in session. People are the ultimate source of power in this country. Did I already read that? I don't think so. I did. I read that. Okay. Citizens in turn feel a sense of empowerment from active participation in local government, which ideally leads to a more civic engagement. This is how municipalities become schoolhouses of democracy. As Alexis de Tocqueville, I think that's how you pronounce it, it is a nation may establish a free government, but without municipal institutions, it cannot have a spirit of liberty, self-government, popular accountability, limited government. These democratic concepts are birthed and nurtured locally. The technocrats and bureaucrats, ideologies, and advocates in our federal and state governments are jealous of local power. A highly civilized community can hardly tolerate a local independence. It is disgusted in numerous blunders and is adapt to desire of success before the experiment is completed. This is also true for the managerial class in local governments who conveyed difference by elected who convey differences by elected leaders, often lacking experience. Experts and elected leaders compete for political market share, just as cities and states do. This is awesome, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Gotta get going, though. I'll see you later. Yeah, of course, Stick. Hopefully you're having a good day, and hopefully have a good rest of the day. Thank you for stopping by. Highly appreciate anybody who stops by, even if it is just for a few minutes. Thank you very much. And like I said, make sure you stay safe and have a good rest of the day. We're going to go down a little bit here. But federalism also demands the municipalities fulfill their obligations with maximal democratic authority within their spheres of governance. Self-empowering weak municipalities, say through stronger mayors, or by unifying city and county governments, must go hand in hand with greater democracy. This can be done, for instance, by developing less scalable issues to neighborhood bodies. Housing policies may be best addressed at the metropolitan scale, while infrastructure maintenance is best handled at the higher local level. When it comes to providing quality public services to residents, local government should aim for efficiency checked by democracy. I actually really like this paragraph in this essay / blog post, or whatever you want to call it, from Real Clear Policy. And the reason I like that is, especially when you talk about the legislative process and what works in particular at Texas. Now, a lot of legislators don't have what Texas does. The best way I could describe it, I believe this is at the House level. I don't think the Senate has. I think the Senate just has one schedule. Well, two schedules. An emergency schedule and the second schedule that has everything else on it. But I believe it's the House that has, the House legislative process has multiple schedules. And these schedules are what define what happens in particular for that legislator and what they plan to go over and what they plan to get passed and so on and so on. And these schedules have a major impact. So even if you just talk about a legislator that only has, say, one schedule or one schedule per se, the schedule is what defines what gets passed and what goes through. But also, I like how they mentioned that there are certain concepts or certain political policies that are best done at different levels of the state government. Especially when you start talking about, hey, should this place have a park or not? That should be best done by that county and that board that represents Parks and Recreation, compared to, say, an entire legislator or an entire executive branch of the state deciding on it. Then when you say, well, how should we do our budget now that COVID is still here and we need to make sure we have enough money to sustain our education, to sustain our healthcare, to sustain our government employees' paychecks, blah, 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 blah. That is best done by the legislators and by the executive branch of the state compared to the local individual of that place, if that makes a lot of sense. So in other words, you can't just paint entire political beliefs or entire political policies by a broad stroke. You have to make sure that you include multiple different ways, and that's why local politics and local bills and local things have a long time before they actually get initiated or happen, because they are at a much slower scale. Especially if they're done right and when it comes to bills and policies and everything like that. So this is a very good article, and it's linked in my YouTube channel, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, or in my Discord or Gilded. Yes, I do have a Gilded server. I don't know if anyone else has Gilded, but I'm a part of the Freedom Scoop network, and we have our Gilded server as everybody, and then we have our individual groups that you can join if you like a certain content creator or not. So it's very cool. Gilded is also on a app you can download on your phone or iPad or whatever you have, if you want to check that out as well. Obviously, I am not paid by Gilded. I just think it's very cool. If you have Discord, Gilded is very similar to Discord. So there's not really too much to change about how it works and everything. So I think that's just kind of cool. I also have a Discord, so if you want my Discord, you can join that by either my About section of the video or by asking for my Discord, and I can give you the link right away, right here. But I thought I would kind of mention that as well. Now we're going to move on to our next article, and that's where you can find my videos linked, or my videos and articles linked for what I talk about on my streams. I don't know who that number is. Oh well. Local government's impact on your life, and this is by Peer Point. Governments and businesses are interrelated. We have our executives of both large multinational corporations and small businesses explain how over-regulation affects their industries. We'll also hear from groups such as labor unions, NGOs, and regional organizations discuss the impact of governmental decisions on their respective programs, issues, and stakeholders. No matter what, government has, does, and will always influence our business and organizations. Excuse me. We all have our own thoughts about how the role of government at the federal state and local levels, although many of us become excited when we have the polls to vote for president or governor, we often fail to realize the direct impact our local government has on. Location is their first major point here. Local government should be important to each of us because it takes care of our local issues. The federal and state governments don't necessarily have the time or capacity to listen to complaints of the residents of a small town or city that has fallen road conditions to our sewer systems or any other neighborhood-related problem. Local governments manage those services that are nearest to our day-to-day life: water, roads, public safety, parking, and so much more. Your voice, your voice equals the voice. Although we can pack our bags and testify before Congress and state legislator, it's much easier and more impactful to give our opinions before county or city governments. Local government interaction means you can directly transform a policy in the making. Plus, participating in your local government makes sure issues that matter to you will be heard. As stated earlier, local governments take responsibility for the services and departments that directly touch you, like police and fire departments, neighborhoods, parks and recreation, public works. According to the city council or committee meetings, ensures your opinions on those many issues are taken into consideration. So like I was just saying, what affects you individually in whatever county you live in has more of an impact to do with what happens in your day-to-day, daily life than a mass law that gets passed through by the pen of Joe Biden through an executive order or anything similar to that. So, once again, local politics, especially when you talk about an individual county level, has a lot to do with what gets passed and everything related to it, because it affects directly the person that is sitting right now compared to a mass governmental style or approach. So, if you want something to happen in your local community, in your local county, or whatever you want to say, you ultimately have to go directly to the source. And it is a lot of extra time. And it's kind of funny, anybody that's ever gone to these like city council meetings or maybe your local county board knows that there's always a few people that are regulars who go to every meeting, and most of the people on that boards don't usually like those people because they always have something to say, and usually it's against whatever they're trying to do because it's those type of people. And that's just the type of interaction or what those people find is kind of fun, and having their voice be heard, and they take it very seriously. So it's kind of funny when you go to those, because a lot of times people who just go there maybe because they have to, because of a merit badge in the case of Boy Scouts like I had to, or in the case of people because they're going for a bill to vote for the president or something, or and they think that they need to show up because it's more impact than just a usual committee meeting or whatever the case may be. Those people are often looked at as kind of weirdos and people that are weird, and you don't really know why they're doing what they're doing or why they're there, wasting their time to talk to the board director about plastic pipes instead of copper pipes or whatever the issue may be. But those are people that are actually know and realize that what they say and the idea that they can do to change policies, to change their perspective, to change people, to change their life along with their neighbors, along with their street, along with their cul-de-sac, whatever you want to say, has more of an impact to do with what happens in their day-to-day life than anything else. So ultimately, you shouldn't necessarily be looking at those people as being weird, but rather people that realize that even at that very local level, there's a lot of things they can do to change what gets passed, or at least make it a little bit harder for an issue that may still get passed because of the way the board is structured, but you at least make them know that you don't particularly like it or whatever the case might be. And that's very important, because even at that level of government, or that level of, well, let's just say government to make it easy, even that level of government representing you on that board, you need to make sure that they are held accountable just as much as you hold accountable a senator or a representative that represents your entire county. At least that's the way it should be, but once again, it's not always ultimately the case. And I do think that as Americans especially, we need to change our approach in how we view even the very, very local neighborhood boards or committees that are out there for your local county and what gets passed. This is also just a guide to elected offices and how you can contact, and we're going to watch a video that I thought was a little bit interesting. It's definitely from a conservative, for sure. Not that that really has too much of a difference, but I just think it's kind of interesting getting his perspective on things about how to contact the local senators or representatives. But I do like what he has to say in general, that he compares them to be employees. I don't want to spoil the video too much, but I want to read this points first. I'm really just discussing the points. We'll read a little bit on details about each, but ultimately I think this is a little bit kind of common sense. But not everybody pays too much attention to politics, so some of this may be new to some people, so I am going to read all the points and discuss them a little bit. The first point here is keep your communication simple, concise, and to the point. Second point, don't raise questions that you aren't prepared to answer. Third point, don't ask questions to embarrass or otherwise put the other party on the defensive. 4, whenever possible, work to build conciseness? I think so. 5th, use all resources available to you. Do your homework, search out others in your situation. Our neighbors can be a valuable resource. Okay. So letters and emails, they say a well-written letter or email is most commonly used and effective means of communicating with elected offices. In today's technology age, email and social media use has surpassed snail mail. Don't expect the same attention to an easily posted email, Twitter, or other form of communication, as well as to get with a well-written letter, phone call, or personal meeting. I do like what they kind of had to say about their first point, because yes, emails and Twitter, especially for politicians, has become a way to communicate with your representative or tweet at your representative in hope that himself or his team that probably ultimately runs his social media account recognizes what you have to say as someone who is a part of that community, especially when you start talking about senators that represent the whole state and not just the individual county or individual district that a representative represents. But it's still very hard, especially with the amount of characters that Twitter gives you, to think out a well concise and clearly give your perspective on an issue in a way that the politician himself can look at and take into account. So even if the politician agrees with you or disagrees with you on your Twitter post, there's still not enough there to show them clearly what you think about it. You're ultimately just making them aware. That was weird. I don't know if anyone else heard that. Oh, I think I know what that is. Thank you for the follow there, Polish Nationalist 69. By the way, that's a very interesting name. Hopefully my sound notification worked. I definitely heard it in my headphones, but it doesn't always go through on the Twitch itself. But once again, thank you for the follow, and hopefully you're having a good day and everything like that. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to put down your questions. Basically, I'm just trying to make a impact on people that you should be paying more attention to your local politics more than you pay attention to your whole entire politics of all the states. I do live in the United States. Your name is Polish, so the way your local government works may be a little bit different than the United States system, but ultimately I think you can still agree with the general thought that you should be paying more attention to what laws and what things get passed in particular compared to the whole entire system itself, if I'm making sense. But as I was kind of saying, it's very hard to contact somebody like that because they ultimately aren't going to be able to know 100% what you're trying to say through your Twitter post especially. So the idea of emailing is still the most effective way of communicating an entire thing you want to say or the entire impact of the statement you want to have, but it doesn't ultimately always give a full-on perspective to what is happening compared to other means of communication. And we're going to get into his video, so I don't want to spoil it too much and say what he had to say, because I want you guys to hear it first from his video before I take it away. But we're going to get to that video. I believe it's here. Yes, we're going to get into the video here. But I first wanted to talk about, in this video, I thought I had it reversed, but this is a good spot for this video, so we'll go ahead. Well, yeah, we'll play this video first and then go to the video I've been talking about. This video is somebody who ran and, well, didn't really run, but was a member of a committee about a natural community and a environmental committee in California. And she talked about her experience on that committee and the fact that you should be paying attention more to local government and try to run if you're into it, or try to at least show up to these meetings and blah, 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 blah. So we'll go ahead and let her kind of explain it all in her video here, but I thought it was a very interesting perspective and at least getting some insight from someone who ran at a very, very local level of her committee in California compared to, say, at a more federal level. But it more talks about local government more than it talks about how to get in touch with the senator, but I still think we're going to play it here. I should have had that article after this video, but oh well. Parts of doing live stream. Live streams are very fun.
Very well requested video, which is about the time I spent serving my local government. Before I get into that, I want to kind of just talk about my experience with local government and when I started getting involved, because I started getting involved in local government when I was in high school. I was a member of the Young Republicans group. And I went to meetings and things, and then I went to college and then became a member of the Young Democrats group. And I grew up in a very conservative area, and at the time when I was in high school, I very much aligned with the political beliefs of my parents. But then when I got out of the home and, you know, into more of a setting for personal growth and started doing my own research, I realized I aligned much more with the Democratic Party, and then I started working with the Democratic Party of Arkansas, and I canvassed and phone banked and worked with local politicians and would go around to neighborhoods and ask people who they're going to vote for, and worked on several different campaigns.
Man, this is great. This is so great. I love canvassing. What a great way to spend my time.
And then after I graduated college, I was a professional actor and moved around quite a bit. And then I moved to California with my boyfriend, now husband, and we were in the same town for about 5 years. And I felt like I had enough roots put down to go ahead and look at serving the local government on a larger capacity. Now, if you want to see change happen in your area, I would argue that local government is much more important than the federal government, because when you are working locally, you can see immediate, impactful change in your own town. And something I think that's a really great example of this is the bag ban in California. So California passed a statewide plastic.
Okay. I love when a computer doesn't pause. You're like, come on, do it. You can do it. Good old trackpads. I'm telling you, I need a mouse, but oh well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, but before she started talking about the next part here, I do agree with her in a large way, especially if you're someone that wants to take local government more seriously through running for a local government position or becoming a board member or something like that. Running for positions like that, you're most likely to have more of an impact than if you were to run for a bigger position right away. Not that you would probably win if you ran for a bigger position through, say, governor or senator our attorney general, our lieutenant governor, or whatever you want right away. You want to win by any means, especially in certain states that already have kind of their set political ladder, such as Texas. There's no way you're ultimately going to win that. And that's what also kind of made Donald Trump such a different sort of candidate, because he was almost able to reach out of that political ladder system and come out of basically nowhere and be the head of the Republican Party, winning the nomination and then becoming the president. That's what made that whole storyline such a weird thing when it comes to politics, because that idea and that happening right away is just so unlikely. And we obviously saw how all that went, and depending on what political party you identify as, is probably what perspective you take away from Donald Trump's presidency. And it doesn't ultimately relate too much to what she's talking about here and to the purpose of this video now. But especially if you want to get involved in politics at some point, or just get involved with what happens at a local level, the idea of joining these local boards through Parks and Recreation or environmental board or whatever these things are at a very, very local community level is a very good way to impact rules, the regulations, changes, budgets in some cases of what's directly going to happen in where you live, and not ultimately everybody else, because it's just much easier to, especially if you're someone that knows what they want, to get things passed and to encourage things from a position of power through serving in a committee than just trying to get things done with your voice and trying to contact the mass system of senators and representatives and whatnot. But I hope that made sense and I explained myself well there. But we'll continue on with the video here.
Bag ban. But the reason that it passed is because a whole bunch of little tiny cities all over the state of California decided that they wanted to ban plastic bags. But every single city had different rules. And so it was driving grocery stores nuts trying to comply with all the different rules in all the different cities. And so they actually championed for the bag ban, because then it would just be straight legislation that made sense over the entire state, which would make it easier on them than having to abide by each city's different ordinance. So this is just one great way that local government can really come, push, and create broader change across an even larger area. So I think getting involved in local government is absolutely wonderful, and it was something that I really wanted to do more of. And then I heard about an opening for the Beautification Commission. Now, the Beautification Commission dealt a lot with litter, because litter in your city isn't super beautiful. And I would highly recommend that you Google your city's name, boards and commissions, because there are boards and commissions for every single city, and they all work in different areas. And the goal of a board and commission is to advise the city council on different legislation. And I think this is a great place for anyone to start, because it's a super low point to entry. And instead of being elected, it's not like I ran a campaign, I was appointed. So I applied for the position, and then I interviewed with the city council through a few rounds, and then I was appointed to that position by the city council, because the city council is choosing their advisors in this area. I will definitely say I was one of the youngest people by a long shot. So I would highly encourage you to check on your local boards and commissions, see if that's a position that you could fill or a position that you would even want to serve. It also gives you a really great understanding of the inner workings of government and a lot of the really kind of slow moving things that happen, and also just the way the process happens. I feel like I gained so much knowledge and so much insight from doing this. But of course, if you were looking for even less of a time commitment, you don't have to be serving on a board and commission to attend a meeting. And this is one of the best ways to push any legislation forward. So if there's something that you would like to see happen in your town, let's say you want to have a citywide cleanup day where you pick up litter and you help inform the public on different waste reduction methods they can use to reduce the amount of plastic and packaging waste that comes into their life. Well, I worked on a day just like that with the Beautification Commission. But if you as a citizen would like to approach that, you could have come to our meeting. You could have said, hey, this is some legislation that I would like to get passed. This is a day that I would like to see happen. This is an event that I would want to see our city hold and host. Then the Beautification Commission would take that under review, and we would talk amongst ourselves about how we could make that happen. And then we would bring you along as part of the process. We would create something together, and then we would pitch it to the city council. So you don't have to be involved in the actual commission to be able to work on really cool projects. And I can tell you, as someone who served, we would love to hear your ideas. We would love for you to come to us with ideas and action plans. And if you
One of the things about these boards and politics really in general is the idea that these politicians, committee members, board members, whatever you want to call them, ultimately are serving you, obviously, and trying to pass things that would do good for their interest and obviously the people they represent's interest. But they're coming from a very narrow perspective. So let's say they're for cleaning up the streets and litter. Somebody who's maybe not so much pro that and more pro budget would come from the approach that how can we do this with budgetary needs in mind? And then someone who's all for wanting to clean up streets is only coming from the perspective that they want every single piece of litter to be off the street. But how you do that and how you work is ultimately the problem. So with them coming from just that narrow perspective and that narrow idea and trying to pass a certain legislation or try to pass a certain community effort or community charity or whatever it might necessarily be, is very hard to do sometimes because they only have that one perspective in mind. So the idea that you might be able to give them ideas as somebody that's interested in going to these board meetings does make a lot of sense in that way, because you're coming from that individual person's perspective and not really coming from a narrow mindset of what you want the more legislative process to be. So I think that that's another very good point she had in what she's saying here as well.
If you want to work through an idea, I'm going to link to a workbook that I created. It's inside of a blog post called How to Get Involved with Local Government, where I have created a full resource that you can use to really flesh out any ideas that you want to bring to your city. I think going through a board and commission is a much easier way of working with your city council, because all boards and commissions have city council liaisons that will bring what the board and commission is working on to the city council. And so working with the board and commission is a really hands-on approach, especially if this is your first time trying to get involved or work on a project with your town. Now I'm going to talk about some of the legislation that I worked on, which I'm really excited about. There are a lot of wins, and there are also a lot of things that just went totally bust. And that's totally okay, because, I'm just doing the best I can. And I think there's this really big misconception that once you're finally in a quote unquote position of power, that you'll be able to change so much. Because I remember thinking I'm just one citizen, I'm just one person. And if I just had a little bit more power, then I would be able to create real change. Well, I can tell you that obviously my power was very, very, very small, but still at the end of the day, I was.
So before she goes on here, that's also another big thing when it comes to politics and why a lot of times people can be frustrated with even local politics, and maybe that's why they want to pay more attention to federal politics or whatever the case may ultimately be. But that idea being that it's very slow, the process of government and how laws get passed, how resolutions get started, how things happen when it comes to the government and policies and whatever you want to call it. It's just an amazingly slow process. And in the case of some legislators, like the Texas legislator that I know the most about because I live in Texas, they purposely made it that way. They purposely made the process and made the legislator a lot harder to get things passed, and so therefore less things would overall be passed, and Texas would stay more the same than have to change more often than not, or whatever you ultimately want to say about that. So I thought that was kind of interesting idea for how that happens. But even the people that serve on these committee boards and serve as representatives or whatever have the same sort of ideas as well, being that ultimately it's very hard to pass things even if you're passionate about it and you're not always going to get your way. So that can make serving in a local position or in local politics very hard to do, because it's ultimately hard to do something even if you are in a position of power and ultimately have it end up being better than what you previously thought of, or whatever you ultimately want to say. Don't know if that made any sense, but I'm going to continue the rest of this video, and I'm going to have to run to the restroom real quick.
It was only one vote. I was still only one person, and I still had to work with a lot of people. I had to compromise, and there was still a lot of work to be done, because there's still so much that you can do as a citizen if you organize correctly and you work together. So change is hard no matter where you are. I worked on several pieces of legislation. I worked on getting a citywide cleanup instituted, which we talked about. I worked on dump day. I worked on a bin bill. I worked on a styrofoam ban. And I worked on trying to create more green spaces in urban areas. So the cleanup day was a huge success. That was really great. The first Saturday after spring, we do a citywide cleanup where we pick up litter and we talk about waste reduction, which was really great and a lot of fun. And I actually wrote the proclamation for that and got to read it. So that was really cool. And then I worked on a bin bill, which was to get more trash cans and recycling bins placed in parks and outside restaurants to try and curb litter. Illegal dumping is a huge problem in my town. So people would have couches and other heavy machinery in the back of trucks or vans, and then they would just dump it on the side of the road. And that cost the taxpayers a lot of money to clean all of that up. So we instituted a dump day so people could come and bring all of the stuff they wanted to dump. And then we had people that were able to take care of it, whether that should have been recycled or going to the landfill or being placed in the secondhand market, etc. So that was a really, really successful day. The styrofoam ban totally failed twice. Like, it was bad. The Small Business Association was upset at me a lot. So I tried to get that off the ground. It totally failed, but worked really hard on that. That was unfortunate. And then, Nala is coming to visit us. Hey, baby. Hey, baby. Hi. Hello. Which is an excellent point. She just told me that you guys should hit the like button. So do it. And then the last thing that I worked on was trying to green more of the spaces in our urban areas. So we had a large just dirt patch that we were working on trying to turn into a community garden or turn into a green space. Now, I left right before when we started working on that, so I'm not sure where they are with that on the process.
Doggy dog.
The thing is about, I did not seek reappointment because we moved cities, and I obviously can't serve a city that I don't live in. So that has definitely been one of the problems that I've experienced a lot in this area, is that I move a lot. So
she's going to go on to talk about the moving a lot problem, and that she still wants to run in politics or run in city governments and whatnot. I don't know why it's doing that sound. Hopefully it's not picking up on the main sound, but that was very squeaky. But it doesn't look like it's picking up on the other networks or whatnot. So we're looking fine on that. But this was her blog directly. This was her blog directly here. Is it picking up or not? Where's my headphones? 1 second. 1 second. I want to make sure it's not picking up. I don't hear it anymore. So I think we're fine. Sorry about that, guys. Hopefully everybody still here and that noise isn't too bad. I know it's very loud when I do it in this room or other people do it in other rooms. The floors are not very giving when it comes to that point. I'm going to check on YouTube real quick, make sure I haven't missed anything on YouTube. I don't think I have. I know Jimmy said hi earlier. Looks like we're all caught up there on YouTube. But as I've said before, I have everything linked in my YouTube description at the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, or you can join my Discord or Gilded server, where I also have everything linked in case you want to check out something by yourself. Maybe you liked a certain video, or you wanted to read an article I didn't finish reading or anything like that. You can definitely check out those things here. But you also had an article here about how to get involved with government. But honestly, there's just so many ads. And I don't really want to disable my ad blocker, even though it didn't block the ads, which doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I do have an ad blocker, and there's still the ads were showing up. So I don't really want to go through that, because honestly, it doesn't look too good. But I have read it, and the actual information in there isn't that bad. So if you're someone that is considering running for local politics or joining these boards, and serve your community in that way, I would definitely recommend reading her blog post here, because the information itself is actually really good. But we are going to move in to our next major topic here, and that being, how in the hell are you supposed to contact your U.S. representatives, your senators, congresswoman, congressmen, your governor, your whatever position you want to name out for your state? How are you supposed to contact them and let them know if you like what they're doing, don't like what they're doing, propose policy ideas, whatever? Ultimately, it comes down to a couple different things. And as we read before in our article, it comes down mostly to emails. And now that social media exists, there are plenty of examples out there of people in social media going and contacting their senators that way, or their representatives that way, through tagging them in a Twitter post. And in some cases, they do reply to your comment, or at least take in your idea for consideration. I know Ted Cruz has done it before. I know AOC has done it before. I believe Bernie Sanders has as well, among a few other senators or politicians, representatives, House members, whatever you want to say, that have been pretty active on their Twitter, especially, and are known for kind of interacting with their community and not just tweeting out. But still, the most common approach to how you're supposed to kind of contact your U.S. senators, or contact your governmental employees, or how you're supposed to contact your representatives, is by email. And this is from the United States Senate .government. So this is directly, I guess you could say, from the source above. It states here how to contact U.S. senators. You can contact senators by writing a letter or message, using your senator's web contact form, by calling, or by visiting. All questions and comments regarding public policy issues, legislation, or requests for personal assistance should be deferred to senators from your state. Please be aware that as a matter of professional courtesy, many senators will be acknowledged but not responded to. A message from another senator's constituent. Then it talks about how you can mail them through your postal code, but also there's an option to call by telephone. And recently I saw a post, I believe it was in reference to the new gun bill, H.R. 127, if I am remembering right, that was talking about banning military-style weapons, mandatory background checks, among many other topics. And it was kind of a controversial bill, especially here in Texas, where there are many gun owners, are people that are pro Second Amendment, more than probably any other state. Maybe Florida could be pro. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. So I know there was a pretty big tweet going around that I saw of somebody that had all of the numbers of the representatives in U.S. or in Texas, and their phone numbers and emails to each, and you would be able to find your district or what representative represents you, their number, their email, and everything, and be able to contact them directly to tell them that you don't like this HR 127, and they better vote no, or you're going to come after them. No, I'm kidding. But you better come after in Minecraft. Anyway, you get the idea. So they basically had that. So phone calls are also gaining popularity within being more of a digitalized America, I guess you could say. Even though usually when people start talking about digitalized, they start talking about social media, and I've talked about Twitter a little bit, but really Twitter and social media isn't the best way to contact your representative if you want to tell them that you don't like something, because all you're going to be able to do is simply tell them that you don't like the very basic thing and what happened, rather than if you had more of a written letter, a well thought out response, a well thought out not almost a script when you go to call in. They know much more about why you don't like this certain bill or why you don't like this certain policy that they want to do in much more details. And that's ultimately more impactful for what they're supposed to do by representing you and what they can take away from what you give them and whatnot. So I do think that that's interesting as well. But before I just keep blabbering on, I thought we would play this video where he kind of talks about the very thing. And his motives are his, not motives, but his ideas for how best to contact your congressman or your local state representatives.
Well, you could post a really scathing meme on Facebook or leave a really
Also,
well thought out, cutting edge.
Also, I find this hilarious because he is definitely the stereotype of a super conservative Republican older gentleman who likes beer and guns and tomahawks, as you can see in the background and everything.
A lot of us in America right now are very concerned.
And his accent, of course. I just thought this was kind of a funny video to talk about it. But what he actually says in the video for how to contact your representative, I thought was good as well. But I just kind of wanted to break this down and play this guy, especially after the last video, where it was very much the opposite political ideology, most compared to this guy. But anyway, I'll keep blabbering on and just play the video.
With the direction our country and our government are heading. But what do we do about it? Well, if you like a lot of people, you could post a really scathing meme on Facebook or leave a really well thought out, cutting edge comment on a YouTube video. Or you could do something that really matters and might have a chance to make a difference. And that's to let your elected employees know what you expect out of them. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to find out A, who your specific elected employees are based on your address, B, how to contact them and let them know what you expect out of them, and C, what is the most effective way to do that. That's what's coming up next here on Survival on Purpose. Welcome back to Survival on Purpose, your home for information and gear reviews related to camping, survival, and general preparedness for regular folks. My name's Brian. Thanks for joining me. So this is going to be sort of a public service announcement video. Bottom line, I noticed there are a lot of comments and memes and everything. People are upset. People take, I don't know how long it takes to type out a 3-page comment with your thumbs, but I get them. So I thought, you know what, maybe it's just because people don't know how to contact their elected employees and how effective that can be. So what we're going to do is take you straight to my computer screen. I'm going to show you exactly the best website I found that will help you find out exactly who your elected employees are. You don't need to know your district. You don't need to know any information about congressional districts and gerrymandering, anything. As long as you know your address, you can find out exactly who your elected employees are. And that's a very key point. They are your employees. They like to be called officials. I prefer to call them employees. So let's take it to the old computer screen and show you exactly how to find your elected employees.
I love the jump cuts in here as well.
Then we'll come back and talk about what is the most effective way to do that and let them know what you expect of them. And we're going to do all that right after this word from one of our sponsors. This video is sponsored by my friends at ClickBelt. The ClickBelt I'm wearing today is my two.
Can you guess what ClickBelt is about? Can you guess? I just told you he was pretty conservative. No, it's about holster for guns. I just I find this video hilarious. Like I said, the information is actually pretty good, and I do like what he has to say. It's very simple, but I still thought I would kind of play the video. Plus, I kind of find it a little bit funny, so I'm kind of getting both out of this video. And ultimately, that's kind of the best thing you can do for something like this: educational but funny.
Let's get to the computer screen. So as you can see, we're doing a quick Google search, and I found the government sites are just really not very effective. The most effective one I found was the Common Cause site. Now, I don't know which political leaning they have, and I really don't care, but if you type your address in the search bar here, it will pull up your specific elected employees based upon where you live. Everything from the president to the senator.
By the way, I don't know how a site that basically gives you what representatives represent you would have any sort of political leaning. It's just factual information. So I don't know. I don't really know what he was saying there. I guess it would be the goals of the site itself, like what educational resources they give out, or what opinions they write, if they do write articles, or if they have a podcast or something like that. I guess you could be talking about that. But I just found that a little bit kind of funny as well.
To your congressman, even to your state. And it's also got their party affiliations there. So as an example, you can see that David Scott is my congressional representative, and he is listed as a Democrat. You'll also see there's a link here that says a little more. If you click that over, it's going to take you to a dedicated page about your whatever employee you clicked on. And then if you want to get in touch with them, you can click on their website, and that's going to give you more information about them. Here's where it may get a little bit gray, but in this particular case, I found the contact page on his website. And if you'll notice, there is both a Washington address and a couple of local addresses listed. According to an article I read by a former congressional staffer, the most effective address to use is the local addresses, because they're going to probably have people on staff even when the congressional office may be closed and out of session or whatever. So anyway, that's it. Okay, so
that's kind of all he had to say about that. He talks a little bit more and gives some more information, but really that's kind of all I wanted to share for that particular area. And this is the Common Cause website directly. So it looks like there are some articles about your state and kind of what they do or represent, how to fix the broken electoral system and gerrymandering. So those type of basic concept probably means that it leans Democratic, because those are two kind of more Democratic ideas. Most Republicans or conservatives are for the Electoral College, compared to most Democrats or most leftists or liberals or whatever you want to call them. So it probably does lean Democratic from a organizational way, but I don't really see how that matters if you're just looking up your representatives. Oops. We're going to play this video later. I think we're going to take our break now and look at my snow day, is what I called it here. Hopefully it'll be linked up and ready to go. It published while we were performing here. And then we are going to circle back to our main topic, where I'm going to talk about the Texas legislator, because I do live in Texas and I do want to know details about what's going to happen, because especially here in Texas, we are redistricting our lines and our legislator is meeting now. I think many other states also have their legislator meeting now. But I just thought it would be interesting to make sure I know the exact details that are happening in my state, especially since I'm doing a video about wanting to pay more attention to state and local politics. So I thought it would be kind of good to end this kind of stream, what's going on here, talking about my particular Texas legislator, because the Texas legislator and your legislator in whatever state you live in has a huge impact into what rules, what resolutions, what things get passed in the process. Oh, I woke up at 2, and it's thicker than it was that first day. The truck's over there. Well, hello everybody. Handsome. So I'm obviously at the college campus, of course, and it's February 15th, which happens to be my birthday also, and now the college has canceled for I didn't even notice that. That's the worst angle you could possibly get. Like really walked through, and how like kind of thick the snow is. I don't know, maybe like 4 inches, 3 inches, but basically shoe length. That's not horrible. But the gym's up there, and the gym's got, this much thicker. The gym's got a whole bunch of snow because people haven't walked through it yet. I'm kind of just walking over to the trails because I'm interested to see what the trails look like. And actually looked at part of the area as a camp walked through, and it's pretty thick, but it's kind of powdery. Like, it's a very soft snow compared to the first batch. I think that sign's a little bit old. I don't think we're really having game day much anymore. Whoa! Okay. Oh, we're starting to get into some deeper snows now. That is hilarious. Looks like they got everything. Shit. They got everything coned off.
I slipped right there.
Because that's pretty.
It's kind of like
thick.
snow with ice.
Now
so
my
it's just kind
socks
of a
are actually
funny
wet.
thing.
They weren't wet before. Now they are. So, woohoo! Behind me is the field area where they play the soccer games. Back there in the distance, you can kind of see. But yeah, there's not too much really to talk about here. But the trails are just past the field, so I was gonna walk down to the trails like I mentioned earlier.
Oh yeah, look at that handsome.
But let's see how kind of fit the field is, because it doesn't look like too many people have walked on the field or not. Ooh, look at that. It's ice. I'm standing. I probably shouldn't be standing here much. That's kind of fun. Oh shit. Yep, I probably shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I was walking and I stepped on it, and when I heard the and I'm like, ooh, I don't know what that is. It took me like 2 seconds to realize what it was, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't really be standing here. It was just kind of funny. But yeah, we're just taking a break here for anybody that may be stopping by now. This is the snow that is on my college campus. I live in Texas, so anybody that may be following just general weather updates, our Twitter yesterday and today, has probably seen that Texas is under a severe winter storm, or cold storm, whatever you want to call it. And this is just at my college campus. And I was just making some videos earlier today that I was going to play on a stream, and I'm obviously playing them now because this is also my birthday. So I woke up to all this snow and classes being canceled and everything on my birthday and whatnot. So I was like, well, this is a very different birthday than the 20 others I've had since it's the 21st birthday. But we'll continue on with the videos here.
Oh shit! Wow. This is the bridge behind me. I was wanting to have a look at to see what the snow did, because the first snowstorm I was gonna go over here, but I never did because we got in a whole bunch of snowball fights or whatnot. So I was interested to see what the bridge would kind of look like, and it doesn't look too crazy, really. Walking across it now, even though the snow sounds kind of funny. But once we get to the other end, I'll kind of show you what it looks like over here. Like, it's not frozen enough to make the whole lake, I guess you would call it, river, probably lake, pond, something like that, to make it freeze over. But it's definitely got some texture to it, or some frozen spots. Texture doesn't really make sense, but as you can kind of see, there's some frozen spots on the lake here, what I thought was kind of interesting. I guess we'll do a whole panorama. And on this side, there's not as much really on this side, besides that spot where you got some droplets off the pipe. But here's the bridge itself that I just walked over. So it's not as snow covered as I really thought. But then again, it doesn't make sense why it would be either, because it's just not really how things work. But I thought that was kind of interesting to look at anyway. But I think I'm going to head over to the main trails just to see what they kind of look like. I don't really think it's going to be too different of a look, but I got enough time to look at it before the stream and show these videos on the stream probably. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that one.
We're showing them now.
I just ran across the last part of the trail. Let me tell you, running in snow is a lot harder. A lot harder. I mean, all this probably looks the same. I don't really see too much of a difference myself. I know there's a big hill up here full of mulch, and it looks like some people are on top of it. I don't know if you can really see it from here, but it's that kind of big snow patch in the back. Yeah, you probably can't really see it from here, but it's like right there behind those trees. But I mean, it probably all looks the same from all these videos, but I still feel like doing it.
I got a
I'm
very
gonna go over
shaky
to the
camera.
hill,
Very shaky camera.
do some videos of whatever's happening on the hill.
There's definitely no photographer.
It's
in
actually a
me,
lot
that's for
more
sure.
walkthrough than I
Definitely
thought
no
it was gonna be.
photographer.
Because not too many people really use these trails, in my experience of thinking about it, at least for when I walked on the trails at the end of last semester and whatnot. But yeah, it looks like some people are on top of the hills. A family, it looks like, doing some sledding on top of the hills right there. So that's kind of cool. Not too shocking, really. There's a lot more snow over this bridge. It's more in the woods, too. But yeah, it's a lot thicker. A lot thicker of snow. Which is kind of funny, because even when this bridge doesn't have a lot of snow, it still looks kind of very sketchy. Like, a lot of the wood's pretty rotten. But this is kind of what I was expecting the trails to look like, where you can't even tell where you're supposed to go. You see people going down there, which is technically a trail down here, as you can see from here, that Creekside tab. But if you want to follow the generic trail, you have to come up here and take a right up there. There's kind of a patch sign. So we're going to do that and just see what it kind of looks like. But like I was saying before, it's a lot more walked through than...
I'm going to take this call real quick because it's around my mother. Make sure not anything crazy happening. But I'm going to let this play out. And hopefully I'll be back once it ends here.
any of the other areas that I thought it would be. Kind of surprised. It's kind of funny how thick that is over the benches with the snow. Like, you could probably pick it up. Like, it's as big as the handprint of snow. You can make a snowball off of that for sure. But the trail's back this way. You probably can see it. I don't know if I'm angling it right or not. But yeah, the trail's back that way. Well, really, there's not too much.
Probably shouldn't be doing that. We're gonna find a video real quick that we can play while I go off and make sure I'm not missing any important call or anything from my mom now. I don't want to make sure it's not an emergency or anything. I doubt it's not. Probably just wishing me a happy birthday. But I want to make sure it's nothing crazy. So we're gonna find a video real quick that we can put on while we wait. We'll put on my friend here, Friendo Today. I would recommend checking out his channel on YouTube or Twitch if you are a person of informed beliefs or informed politics, somebody that basically knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, well, I'll figure something out for channel points eventually, but not in the next 2 weeks. These are the these are some of the little figurines that I'm working on. Oh, hey, Abby. Hey. Hey, coming to say hello. Yeah, dog. Oh, my goodness. It's such good and easy content. Mwah. All right, nice. Bloop.
Okay. Okay. Streams are still going along. All right. All right, let's get into the news. Ooh, all right, since we're getting into the news, hold on. I'm going to switch up my Twitch category. Talk shows and podcasts. Politics. Educational. Behind the scenes. News. Done. All right, sick. Switched over to politics. I would so play a tabletop RPG based on American politics. Is that sad? A little, but I like it. I like that idea. Maybe we could try and design something like that on stream, right? Like, when I get into kind of tabletop RPG content, I'm actually a little bit less interested in like running games on stream and more doing like dungeon master prep on stream and like system building on stream and stuff like that. Yeah. All right. Inflation fears. So, all right. What's the deal here?
Okay. Sorry about that.
All right.
They lost power back at home because they also are in Texas, more South Texas than where I am here. But either way, they lost power for their house. So I missed the call, and I tried calling back, and she didn't answer. So hopefully it's not anything too crazy. But if she calls back, I'll have to answer it right away. With all this craziness going on, it's hard to tell if it's an emergency or if they're just wanting to wish me a happy birthday. But we'll see if she calls back, and I'll have to answer if she does right away. Okay. Oops, I missed it. Dang it. Alright, well, let me go here in the description. We need to pull that video because I do want to play that video. I think it was this video here. By the way, anybody stopping by now, basically I'm making the argument of why we need to put more emphasis on local government and compared to national government through the president and vice president, because local government has a lot more to do with your everyday, day-to-day concerns, policies, or whatever you ultimately want to call it, compared to, say, anything else for that matter, really. So I want to make sure I note that and everything related to that. Oh, she's calling back, so I'm going to put him back on, and we'll go from there. One second.
Drunk. But yeah, January is not February. I
You
saw
there?
the 13 to 12 and I was like, wait, what? All right.
Yeah, he had to call outside as well.
Donald J. Trump on Wednesday became the first American president to be impeached twice, as 10 members of his party joined with Democrats. Has he, does this have the conviction in it as well, or is this out of date? 7 Republican senators voted to convict Trump. Actually, okay, this is an interesting data point. I want to see which Republican senators crossed the lines to vote for Trump. That is interesting. The Republicans who broke with their party to find Donald J. Trump guilty were an eclectic group, bounded by their shared lack of concern about retribution from the former president or his followers. All right. Washington. The seed for Senator Bill Cassidy's decision to find Donald J. Trump guilty of inciting an insurrection was planted one day last fall, when he received an email from a friend that was full of then-president's false claims about a stolen election. Alarmed that Mr. Trump's lies were gaining credence, Mr. Cassidy, a Louisiana Republican, became part of a small minority in his party and one of only a few officials in the South to acknowledge President Biden's victory. Months later, after Mr. Trump's campaign to overturn the election culminated in the Capitol riot, Mr. Cassidy was one of only 7 Republican senators who voted on Saturday to convict him. Cruz is... I don't like Ted Cruz. I'll put it that way. Taken at face value, Mr. Cassidy, a conservative, newly re-elected physician with a quirky streak, has little in common with the 6 other senators who broke from their party and found Mr. Trump guilty in the most bipartisan vote for a presidential impeachment conviction in United States history. Yo, what? That sucks. I mean, yay! It's the most bipartisan vote in history, but still extremely partisan. Like, what a fucking joke. Right? If this is the most bipartisan vote we've ever gotten for impeachment, is impeachment even a thing, right? I guess theoretically, Nixon would have had a more bipartisan impeachment had he not resigned, but still. Most were facing intense backlash on Sunday from Republicans in their states livid about the vote, as have the 10 House Republicans who supported the impeachment last month. I want to see, I want to see what this backlash is. But the senators were united by a common thread. Each of them, for their own reasons, was unafraid of political retribution from Mr. Trump or his supporters, right? This is actually, I think, a really key point to make by the New York Times, right? The fundamental core of a lot of the decision-making that senators made was, do I think I can politically afford to oppose Donald Trump? Which is not a trivial fucking thing to consider if you are a Republican, because you can get primaried, and Trump is probably more in line with the base of the Republican Party than the Republican establishment is. So it is a real risk. But apparently for each of these 7 senators, that's not something they were concerned about, right? So an easy example is Mitt Romney, right? Mitt Romney does not get his political power from the same place that Donald Trump gets his political power. So, Mitt Romney does not jeopardize his career in the same way that a lot of other folks do when they speak out against Donald Trump. Why is that? It's because Mitt Romney, senator from Utah, has an extraordinarily powerful base within the Mormon church there, given that he is himself a Mormon. And the Mormons themselves, based on my understanding, aren't huge fans of Trump, but were willing to vote with him to an extent strategically. So, those who have a separate power base are not beholden to Trump. And this is an important aspect of politics in general, right? Where you get your power from is who you're going to support. Because if you stop supporting them, you stop having power. Do I think impeachment votes should be anonymous? I understand the importance of accountability for your vote, but I don't see any way to be impartial when you're at risk of being censured or primaried. Interesting. I'm not 100% confident in this, but I think having them be anonymous would be a net improvement for impeachment being able to fulfill the role that it is meant to fulfill. by essentially depoliticizing it a little bit. Haven't gotten to grips with the mechanics of the oh yeah, you can have a yeah, that's actually very interesting. You should if you're thinking of something like that, look into money in Burning Wheel. So Burning Wheel is a RPG player's RPG system. It's honestly probably too intense to play and actually enjoy. But essentially the way money works in Burning Wheel is that you like don't actually have coins. You have like a resource stat, and it can like go up and down. And if you want to be able to like do something, you have to like roll your resource stat, but then you stress it and then you lose it and stuff like that. It's interesting. I could see something like that working for political capital pretty well as well, where like political capital is like, you could do like a dice pool system, right? You could do a system where it's like, as you earn political capital, you get dice in your political capital dice pool, and then you can add those dice to die rolls, and then like every successful or unsuccessful die roll there is like removed, and that's like the political capital you burned, something like that. I'm gonna min-max a lobbyist build, I think.
Alrighty. I should be back now for the rest of the episodes here.
I think
so hopefully Friendo kept y'all busy.
Having anonymous votes for
I always like his content. His content. He does similar stuff to what I do, so that's probably why I like him. That would make sense. Yeah, that would make sense for why I would probably like him. But yeah, I really like his content. He's very research heavy based and just a very smart guy, I think. And he, I just like his style for more than anything else. So hopefully y'all also liked him as well while y'all were in that break. But we're going to go to our next video here. Actually, yeah, we're going to go to our next video here.
Baking with pure water is in great taste.
With the University of Texas at Austin campus just steps away from the Capitol building, and with the 85th legislative session in full swing, here's an explanation of the basics behind the Texas Legislator. We will focus on the legislature because it is considered the most powerful branch of the state, above the judicial and executive. The Texas Constitution declares that regular session be held on the second Tuesday at noon in January of each odd number year for 140 calendar days. This year the session began on January 10th. The structure within the legislature is what is known as a bicameral system, meaning that there are two branches or chambers that make up the legislature. The upper level, which has 31 seats, is the Texas Senate. The lower level is the House of Representatives. The House is made up of 150 members. Texas is one of 25 states where one party, in this case the Republican Party, has control over the major parts of government, meaning the governor and the majority in both the House and Senate is Republican. This is known as the trifecta. Within the chambers, there are elected officials that lead each branch. The Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, and the Speaker of the House, Joe Strauss, both hold the leading positions in each chamber. The Lieutenant Governor is elected statewide by Texans, while the Speaker of the House is elected by fellow House members. While both preside over the legislative meetings, they also select committee members. A committee is a sub-organization that is concerned with a specific issue. This allows members to gain a deep understanding of the issue under their jurisdiction. Committees are the most crucial part of creating new legislature. Now that you have an understanding of the Texas legislature, you are one step closer to being able to participate in the lawmaking process.
So right, as I was saying earlier, before all this craziness with the phones and trying to contact my parents and whatnot because they're in a blackout or whatever,
Anyway, before all this craziness, I wanted to go to the Texas legislator and talk about Texas a little bit, because that is where I am from, and I want to make sure I know my state policy, state politics, just as much as anybody else, especially since my whole point of making this video and everything like that is to make sure I push for people paying more attention to their local politics and when it comes to that. So that's kind of the major topic and everything like that. I see everybody's comments here on Twitch here. Hello, Num. Hello there. Hopefully you're having a good day. Tony says, do you like politics? Do you like Obama or Trump? Num says, what is politics? Which one is sexier? Well, I have to say, to answer your questions there, Tony and Num, I do like politics. And I would say that I'm not a fan of Obama or Trump, really. I really like either of them. If you ask me which one I liked better, I don't really know too much about Obama's policies that much, because that was when I was just starting to get into politics. So I know a lot more about Trump's policies and what Trump did, being the president I've paid the most amount of attention to, because I'm only 21, literally, as of today. So I don't really know too much about that, so I don't know if I can ultimately answer that question fully. But I definitely liked some of what Trump's policies were, but definitely not all of Trump's policies. And I probably would say the same for Obama. So I don't know if that ultimately answers your question or not, but that's kind of where I stand on that. And if you ask me which party I am from, I mostly define myself as libertarian. And more than anything else, I was pretty conservative for a while, but I think I'm leaning more and more towards the libertarian as the party I identify with now. But I don't really identify with any major party like fully by any means. I take kind of some from both and some from all type of approach. So it's hard to really say which exact party I am a part of, if that makes any sense. It is pronounced Cunum. Well, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right or not. You can ask anybody who stumbled upon my streams and everything. I am the worst when it comes to names, so I apologize if I am reading your name wrong. I definitely don't intend to do so. Yeah, definitely don't intend to do so, so I apologize for that if that is the case. Now, one quick thing I wanted to mention is every state legislator, no matter what state you're a part of or who represents you, is going to have a website where it talks about the legislator, or going to have the website that represents the legislator, I guess is the best way you can put it. And the person who, or the website that represents the legislator, is going to have all the information. So today being Saturday, or today being Sunday, Monday. Sorry, today's Monday. Today being Monday, the legislator is probably in session, but the last time I looked to see if there was any video broadcasts, there is nothing, and there still is nothing currently or scheduled for today. So maybe the legislator is out of session, which would make sense because of all the craziness that is happening that I just showed recently with all the snow and everything like that. Tony said, that's what Mary means. Tony says, why is there less people in the US than in the UK? It's not fair. RIP VOM. Are you voting for Black Lives Matter? Tony, no problem. No. Well, there's no vote that Black Lives Matter has. If you say that if I'm for Black Lives Matter, that's a whole separate question. And ultimately, I'm for the purpose Black Lives Matter holds and what they represent. But I don't like a lot of their members that founded the organization or are in the organization now, because they don't really think that they even represent originally what the organization was supposed to mean and supposed to do. But the organization themselves is important and something that should be taken into account, and that is something that should be considered for sure. So every state legislator has a website, so that is important to check yours if you want to check that out as well. I put in my address and found that these were the representatives that represent me.
So it's very important to know who your representatives are, especially if you don't like a certain bill or anything like that, because they're the ones that are most likely going to be able to change the runnings for what happens. Because ultimately what I'm arguing for the most here is the factor that you need to be able to pay attention to your representatives, because they pass the bills. They do things that matter more for what happens in your life than, say, the President of the United States, even though the President of the United States may have more of an actual impact, especially when it comes to massive policy changes or new standards or whatever the reason may be. Is the BLM movement being hated towards the Hispanic peoples? Tony, can you run for president? Can you do 10 push-ups, 10 votes for BLM? Is the BLM movement being hated towards the Hispanic people? I think you're in reference to some of the videos that were happening in California, if I remember right, where it was with Asian. No, that was with Asians, not Hispanics. But there's some footage, I believe, in California where there was this phenomenon of people pushing over older Asian men, and they were getting called, the police organizations there were getting called racist because a lot of the people who were doing so were black. So it's very important to, anyway, that was that whole story and whole scandal there. So anyway, I don't know where exactly that matters too much. Now, one of the big things that is happening with the Texas legislator now is redistricting. And this is a huge thing. I don't know if other states are redistricting. With the census data out for 2020, or about to be out, it's important that I think many states are going to redistrict their lines and redraw. So depending on what they redraw and how they redraw the districts could determine how easy it is for their party to win in the future, or how big the party might have in support. So that is something to take into consideration as well. So Texas is under redistricting, and you can check out this website if you want to know more about how they plan to redistrict and everything. But I don't think they have the census data yet, so I don't think that they have started redistricting as much as anything else. Thank you for the good. Where is Texas on Google Maps? Texas is the second biggest state, so I'm pretty sure you're aware of where Texas is located. So one of the biggest things about especially when you talk about a legislator, and I could go over the role the legislator has, but ultimately I think it's very important that you know your own state legislator, because they operate in a very different way. And if I were to do a video about legislator, I feel like I would have to do a whole separate stream so that I would be able to have more research-based, more everything kind of laid out to make sure everything goes smooth for that. So I think if I'm going to go over the actual legislator in detail and talk about the role the legislator has and why you should pay more attention to your legislator, I think it would have to be a separate stream. And I am definitely willing to do that. But I did want to bring up the point about having to have a productive phone call with the legislator's office. I can't do a video of the gym routine, but I might be able to give you a room tour in a little bit if you are wanting to see the room. Obviously, it's pretty much what you see. There's not too much else in the room, so you're not really missing too much from what my camera is showing directly behind me for kind of what the room looks like. But here's the steps they give to calling the legislator. Call Congresswoman's office directly through the through the switchboard, If you do not have a direct number, you can reach the U.S. representatives by calling 202-225-3121, and U.S. senators by calling 202-224-3121. Ask the operator to connect you to the individual's office. If you do not know the names of your members of Congress or want the direct line to their office, you can find their senators here and their representatives here with links. Ask to speak to the aide who handles the issues on which you are calling. This is the biggest point I thought that they had. Because ultimately, when you think about these things and you think about the ideas or whatever, you ultimately want to take the approach of, okay, let's put it this way. if you are anti-HR 127, that being the gun bill that is out right now, you would want to make sure you let your senator know or your representative know that you do not like this gun bill that is going to get voted on and maybe passed here in the future with the upcoming months or upcoming couple hours or whatever you want to say. So you would want to make sure you let them know. So by contacting the representative and giving them the aid, somebody that works directly with that person gives a very good opportunity to actually have meaning, to actually have something that could change the way the senator views if you're good enough at explaining why you dislike HR 127 or why you like HR 127 and whatnot. Tony asks here, happy birthday, where are you celebrating your birthday? Well, my friend, I am celebrating my birthday right here, doing a live stream, and then I'm going to go to my friend's live stream that starts in about an hour or so from now, and listen to him, and listen to their videos that are part of the Freedom Scoop network that I mentioned at the beginning. So I'm just going to be kind of sitting here because I don't know when y'all stumbled on to this video here, but it's important to... I don't know, what am I saying? I don't know where y'all contacted yourself here or everything, but ultimately we are in a snowstorm weather advisor, and I just played some videos of me walking around in the snow and a little bit later, so anyway. Let them know that you're a constituent, because obviously they're not going to want to talk to you if you're not. And then they give some other ideas, which I thought was kind of interesting. Now, this next article is very beefy and talks about a lot of things. And also, it talks a little bit about the legislative process and how it works in Texas. So it gets a little bit long as far as that goes. And I don't want to ultimately make people too bored. So we are going to summarize this more than anything else, so that y'all guys don't get too bored. But ultimately, the way the legislator works in a very, very simplistic process, this being the legislator for Texas, is Governor Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas. Obviously, I just said that. He gets to make a impact or make a consideration, I guess you could call it, about what they should be voting on or what they should be talking about, and give them a basic calendar idea about who to discuss and everything related to that. So because of that, it's very important that everything is kind of known about that. So he's the one that sets those agendas, basically, and off of those agendas and off of those calendars and off of everything like that, things then get voted on and get passed directly through there or not. And that's kind of the role and the idea of the Texas legislator in the process of how the governor interacts with them, with trying to get certain things passed or certain things not passed or whatever it may necessarily be. So that article kind of talks about that, but I think I'm going to actually save this article for when I do it about the legislator, because the more I think about it, the more I think that actually doing a video on the legislator itself and how it works in Texas, and learning about the process and what bills and everything are up for debates would have more of an impact. So because of that, I'm going to go right over to somebody who is live right now, and hopefully y'all will stay to join their channel, and we could have our fun over there as well and learn about whatever they are watching. I don't know why I did that, so bear with me here a second or two. Hopefully I could do the raid successfully this time. One second. Do y'all want Minecraft stream or do y'all want a political stream? I could do either one. Do you want Minecraft or political? That is the question right now. Minecraft or political? What do y'all think? Y'all are thinking Minecraft?
And y'all want that room tour. God, why did it not work? He's kind of a small streamer as well, I would say. I would say he's kind of a small streamer as well for the political guy. He knows more content than other people, I would say. But he's popular on other platforms, I should say. But he just recently started on Twitch. Ah. I don't know why it's not working. Alright, well, maybe he has his settings set off and we can't raid into him. So we're going to go somewhere else here. Bear with me real quick. We'll raid into our politics streamer since he may have his settings off for raids. So we're going to go to our politics guy here and my fellow Freedom Scoop content creator as they are live with the Red and Edge show. And hopefully y'all can share your insight and with him as well. Alright, just getting on my nerves. JEDGAR 101. Why is it not working? Do I like a beard? Sure, I like a beard, yeah. I like beards. Yeah, why not? Alright, we'll try this one. We'll try this one. I'm starting to... Maybe I have my... Maybe I have my settings changed off on the resource or on my streaming thing, which doesn't make sense. I don't know why that would be. But I had problems with this before. Alright, I think that's the problem. Alright, we're going to play this real quick while I figure this out. And then we'll circle back to our raids here.
Good evening, everyone. I often note I'm going to circle back. I hate to disappoint conservative Twitter, but I am going to circle back on a number of things, as we often do directly. I'll circle back, circle back. I hate to disappoint you. Circle back, that's an excellent question. Circle back, circle back. I hate to disappoint you, but we will venture to circle back with all of you.
Taking cocaine or not? What do you think?
This is such a good question. I have not had the opportunity to dig into that. I'll circle back.
It was a massive dump. To this day, everyone's trying to figure out where did it come from.
I'm not aware of anything, but we'll circle back.
This uncircumcised Philistine, who does he think he is?
As a mom myself, I want to know all the details. I have to circle back.
Come on, man. You know what I mean?
I will venture to get you an answer on that, and maybe we can talk about it, and you'll circle back. I will have to circle back on that one. Circle back. But we'll circle back. Circle back. But I will have to circle back with you. Circle back. Let me give you a very specific example. I'll circle back. Circle back. I hate to disappoint you. Circle back. That's an excellent question. Circle back. I hate to disappoint you, but we will venture to circle back.
This president knew back in January. Why didn't he tell us? Why did he warn us?
There are a number of ways to combat misinformation. One of them is circle back.
You told us that Trump was invincible and Hillary was in the prison, right?
I don't really have any predictions for you on that. I can circle back. Let me see if I can get more detail for you on that. Circle back.
I signed something saying that if I'm wrong, I can go to prison. Did you?
We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. I'll circle back. I don't have anything more for you.
We'll circle back.
And that communication has been lacking.
Circle back.
Well, as you know,
We'll circle back.
let me give you a very specific example. I'll circle back. I hate to disappoint you. Circle back. That's an excellent question. Circle back.
Alrighty.
I hate to disappoint you.
I don't know why it's not working, so we're just gonna have to end the stream here today. I think I have a theory.
I'm going to check that, and hopefully next stream it will work so that I can raid over to a content creator. I did try all the, anyway, I don't know why, so we'll see about that, but thank you everybody for stopping by. I appreciate it all, and thank you everybody, and like I just said, have a good rest of the day or night or morning or whatever time